Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Huh? Naruto looked up to a clean white ceiling above him. Knowing his apartment's walls, let alone its ceiling, were never this free of dirt, he assumed he was in the hospital. The blonde heard the door open. A nurse from the hospital, along with Tsunade, Shizune, and the person he ironically wanted to see least right now, Sakura, walked in. The memory of how he failed his first important mission stuck with him. He didn't want to see anyone, let alone the girl who he broke a promise to. Naruto? Normally her voice would cause his heart to jump a little. All it served to do now was to send fearful chill up his spine this time. It belonged to the girl whom he cherished and would do anything for. Not only because she was his teammate and friend, but because he'd had feelings for her ever since he first saw her at the academy. He turned away. Naruto. Look at me. Her steady timbre cracked a bit. He looked up, expecting to see disappointment and anger in her beautiful emerald eyes. However, when he made eye contact with her, he was startled. All he could see was worry evident all over her face. The blonde's mouth involuntarily opened in surprise at this. His own common sense caught up with him soon after. The worry clearly wasn't for him. He pressed his lips together in a thin line and sighed. Gomen Sakura-chan. A pitiful apology was all the blonde could manage. By now Tsunade and Shizune realized that the two genin needed some time alone. So with much reluctance, mostly on Tsunade's part, they left the room. Baka. The words softly passed her lips. Huh? Naruto's head snapped up. You baka. He couldn't fight the conditioned response of putting his hands up in defense. He knew that Sakura would worry over Sasuke and forget about him. It always happened that way. He braced himself for the attack, knowing that in his condition, Kyuubi healed his injuries, but he was still sore as hell. This would be one of the most painful beatings he'd received from the pink-haired kunoichi to date. Surprisingly, the blows didn't come. Instead, a warm sensation enveloped Naruto's entire midsection. He enjoyed it for a second. The audible sound of muffling along with the feeling his bandages get wet brought him back to his senses. The blonde looked down in surprise at her short pink hair. The strands bobbed with every sob that racked her body. Sakura-chan? His hand came up to scratch the back of his head. Naruto's face screwed up in confusion. It wasn't as if he didn't appreciate her attention, but she was wetting his bandages. The answer to why Sakura would cry to him instead of hit him never came. The blonde briefly entertained the thought of someone using a henge, but immediately dismissed it. She'd come in with Tsunade and Shizune earlier and he was certain they'd checked. He cautiously let a hand rest atop her head. What's wrong, Sakura-chan? MMPHMWS wo MWR read, was the muffled reply. If Sakura hadn't been crying, he would have laughed at her blubbered response. Though the blonde knew now wasn't the time for humor. His mood alone dampened his will to laugh at anything. He sighed again, fighting the urge to flinch back at his next move. Boldly, Naruto put his arms around her in a protecting manner and rocked her. His female teammate always had been the only one on their team to shed tears. Her skin was smooth to the touch even with his bandages wrapping his arms. He dragged a few fingers along her arms, marveling at the softness. The blonde immediately returned his hands to her back when her sobs stopped. Sakura-chan, please tell me what's wrong. Naruto knew it was probably about Sasuke but decided to console her anyway. Besides, he could enjoy this rare contact for a few seconds longer. Sakura was quiet for a moment. She sniffed again before speaking up. I was just so worried, Naruto. Sakura-chan, I promise I'll bring him back as soon as I get out of here. Naruto stated impulsively. His heart clenched as he realized that it wasn't likely she'd trust him after the first botched attempt. I wasn't just worried about Sasuke-kun, Yubaka. Then, you were worried about Choji too? I knew it wasn't just Ino who had a crush on him. Tsunade and Shizune's sweat dropped from the other side of the door. Both were thinking the same thing. How clueless could Naruto be? Sakura started shaking in anger. Naruto released her and shielded his face with his forearms. The pinkette quickly quelled her fury. She gently pulled his arms away from his face until Naruto faced her eye to eye. His obvious surprise nearly caused her to giggle. No, not Choji. I was worried about you, Naruto. Despite the situation, Sakura almost laughed at his expression. It was a mixture that she had trouble discerning but still left a humorous twisted expression on his face. Why you were worried about me, Sakura-chan? Hi, she replied. When Kakashi-sensei brought you through the gates, I saw your condition and I rushed to the hospital. Sensei told me he didn't see the fight, but on his way there he felt some of the highest chakra levels he'd felt in a long time. Sakura focused her eyes on her legs. What happened? Naruto told her the story about how he and Sasuke fought, excluding the part about using the Kyuubi's chakra and Sasuke using the curse seal. That would be giving her too much to worry about, and showed her Sasuke's headband with sad eyes. They both cried a little. Well, Naruto a lot. Unfortunately, while he did want to comfort Sakura, she gained a vast amount of strength when emotional and was currently hugging him. Naruto was in heaven but in an intense amount of pain and discomfort at the same time. He was enjoying himself, somewhat. When the crying stopped, Naruto continued to comfort his teammate until she spoke up. Next time we're both going to get Sasuke-kun. Naruto was surprised. He nodded nevertheless. Hi, next time we'll drag that Teme back even if it kills us. Naruto and Sakura shared a smile before Naruto sat up straight, bringing Sakura with him. We're going to need some more training if we want to get strong enough to bring Sasuke-kun back, she stated resolutely. I know just the person to ask, the blonde replied, still smiling. Naruto began to get dizzy. His confusion lifted when he felt Sakura's tight grip still on his waist. Without enough time to warn her, he let his eyes fall and passed out. The blonde was happy that he fell asleep holding the girl he felt for so strongly, or rather her holding him. When Sakura realized Naruto had fallen asleep, she quickly removed herself from his embrace. She was torn between leaving the room and staying in the bed with him. She knew Naruto wouldn't mind. He'd also had enough beatings to know not to do anything perverse, and she was terribly tired from crying. She had enough energy to pull the curtain closed before she fell onto the bed. Naruto didn't stir. Sakura scooted over to the unoccupied side of the bed and relaxed. Her eyes leveled on the other bed in the hospital room. The pinkette immediately turned over, involuntarily pressing her face into her teammate's chest. She sucked in a startled breath. The blonde remained still. The pink-haired Kunoichi tried her best to relax. The steady thumping of Naruto's heart put her to sleep seconds later. Naruto awoke at about 4 the next morning. The sound of relaxed breathing next to him was startling at first. That was until he remembered what happened with Sakura yesterday. Looking down, he saw the bubblegum locks of the girl he loved. Sadly, he knew there wouldn't be anything there but friendship. It hurt more given the actual distance between the two this time, but he'd get over it as he always had. Little did Naruto know Sakura had actually had awoken about 10 minutes earlier. She didn't want to leave because she was so comfortable under the blanket with him. After the first 8 minutes, realization had hit home as Sakura blushed until she was sure she'd explode. I'm under Naruto's blankets, with him. After that, she simply had been unable to move because she didn't want to wake Naruto up and risk giving him the wrong idea about their friendship. The message that this would send to him would only prompt to the blonde to ask her for dates more frequently. Naruto quietly slipped out from under her. He was still feeling down and needed to take a walk to get his mind off of things. Once out from under the covers and Sakura, he picked up his clothes from their folded pile on a nearby chair and looked back to her. She seemed to be sleeping. Naruto walked over and chuckled a little. Despite people talking about your forehead sometimes, I think it's kind of cute, he whispered as he leaned down and spontaneously pressed his lips to it. The blonde's survival instincts, along with his common sense, immediately kicked in and he hurriedly drew back. He mentally berated himself for doing something so idiotic. A bit of shame welled up within him. He'd done it while she was asleep. After a quick shake of his head, Naruto left. He completely missed the red tint on the bubblegum-haired Kunoichi's face. Back in the hospital room, Sakura's blush hadn't lifted. The impulse to slug the blonde had been forcefully suppressed by the shock and surprise of the kiss. Sakura shifted under the blankets a few times before going still. Her intention wasn't to hit Naruto anymore, quite the opposite really. The spot on where his lips met her forehead was still warm. She rubbed it absent-mindedly with her index and middle fingers. For some reason or another, Sakura fell asleep again with a content smile that morning. The night before, Tsunade and Shizune had been listening to the two genins' conversation for quite a while before it abruptly stopped. Smirking mischievously, the Godem turned to her apprentice. Shizune, you go and get some rest. I'll make sure they're okay. Shizune, not one to disobey an order, nodded and disappeared. Now for some fun. The Godem walked in to find Naruto lying down with Sakura beside him. Her head lay on his chest. "Aw, that's so cute. We'll have to fix that." She quickly flew through a few hand signs to make sure the two would remain sleeping. Tsunade moved anything she could think of to make sure Naruto was caught in an embarrassing position when he and Sakura woke up. The brat was just too fun to mess with, and he deserved it for making her worry so much. The Godem rose slowly. "Good night, Naruto-kun. Have fun tomorrow," Tsunade whispered as she walked down the hallway. Her near-silent laughter echoed off of the walls of the hospital. At about 2 in the morning, Shizune woke up feeling something was amiss. She quickly left her home to check up on her mistress first. When she entered the office, she wasn't surprised to see Tsunade asleep with a smile on her face, but something was wrong. Tsunade never smiled while asleep unless she drank sake the night before. Shizune sniffed. The sight or smell of sake wasn't anywhere in the office. She decided to forget about it and go ask Naruto. As long as Tsunade was alright, there was no point in stressing over it. The blonde was the last one to be near her sensei last night, and she had nothing else to do, so she set off. When she reached the door, she opened it slowly, just in case the blonde was still asleep. When Shizune poked her head in, her face filled up like a heated thermometer. Sakura was spread-eagled on the bed with nothing but her bra and panties on, while Naruto's head was down between her legs, his hands on her breasts. His hospital gown had disappeared, leaving him in nothing but his boxers. Shizune lifted her head up and looked again. This time her involuntary gasp caused Naruto to snuggle deeper into Sakura. The pinkhead arched her hips and groaned. Careful not to make a sound, Shizune quietly closed the door, allowing the two to return to their business. She halted her first step, a contemplative expression crossing her features. There was no smell of in the room and Naruto-kun with Sakura-chan. How did that happen? Then she remembered the wicked glint in her mistress' eyes the night before and groaned. "Tsunade-sensei, you're such a pervert." Using the same sleeping jutsu as the Godem, Shizune put them in a position which she thought wouldn't get her adoptive brother in too much trouble. She set off with her own mischievous glint her eyes. When Tsunade awoke the next morning, she found she was lying on top of her desk with nothing but her underclothes on. That wasn't the worst of it. She was lying under Maeda Guy. His head rested between her assets. An incredibly satisfied look was engraved on his face. Shizune. On the other side of Konoha, Shizune turned as she heard her name being yelled and started giggling. The giggling soon turned into full-blown laughter. Those that did walk by wondered why an insane brunette-haired woman was cackling in the middle of the street. Naruto paid little attention to where he was going as he continued his absent-minded walk around the village. Although Sakura's words helped him cope with Sasuke's betrayal, he still couldn't banish the thought that he was completely at fault. It didn't help any that the villagers that were awake at 4 in the morning glared at him harder than usual. The blonde tore his eyes away from the ground to find he was atop the Hokage's monument. He stared wordlessly at the entire Leaf Village. It seemed like a peaceful and happy place. The soft breeze ruffled his hair at the same time a peculiar sound interrupted the silence. He ignored it and continued to watch the village. The clear sound of yipping interrupted the silence. He turned around and started to walk into the forest, curiosity piqued. He peered cautiously from behind a few trees. Upon closer inspection, it looked as if it were a dog urinating on a few trees. The whizzing sound rushing toward his position prompted the blonde to jump out of the way, narrowly avoiding the kunai that would have struck his shoulder. Unfortunately, Naruto hadn't been watching where he was going and was soon caught in the middle of the dog's firing range. He couldn't avoid the inevitable as he was splashed in the eyes. Erg nasty. Naruto's scream wasn't only the result of a dog urinating in his eyes. It was the burning that came afterward that had the blonde running around the area. Kiba walked out of the bush seconds later. He fell on the floor laughing at the comical display of Naruto running headfirst into a tree. So Naruto was the one I saw in the brush. Meanwhile, Naruto was still in pain and was now rolling around on the ground. Surely Kami had decided to finally punish him for his years of endless pranks on the village. It was the only explanation for the bad luck he'd been having recently. The blonde's train of thought was interrupted by cold water being hurled into his face. He scowled at Kiba when his vision returned. "Naruto, what are you doing out here so early in the morning?" I usually take Akamaru for his walk, and while we're here we work on training as long as he has to go. I never see you here though, the Inuzuka explained. It took Naruto a minute to respond due to the fact he was still getting over having a dog pee in his eyes. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. I just came to think, the blonde explained. About what? Kiba asked. He already had an idea but didn't want to guess incorrectly and put his friend in a bad mood. About Sasuke Teme and how I failed on the mission. Kiba scowled. Naruto, you had to get it through your head it wasn't only your fault. We all went on the mission to get him back and we all failed. No one person deserves the blame. I know, but that doesn't help me feel any better. Well, why don't you go see if you can find any clues that will help find Sasuke? Kiba knew Anbu had probably combed the area over, but he also knew it would make Naruto feel better. The gloom that surrounded the blonde was beginning to dampen his own mood. Naruto's face brightened. Why didn't I think of that? If I can find some clues on Sasuke, me and Sakura-chan can get his ass back here faster. Thanks Kiba. He sped off towards the gates. Kiba motioned for Akamaru to follow him back to the compound. The small dog gave him a happy yip. Kiba grunted. I'm not getting soft. Naruto bounded across buildings toward the gates. He was halfway there when he stopped abruptly. I can't just leave and not tell Sakura-chan or Ba-chan where I'm going. He turned around and went to the Hokage Tower. He hoped to find Tsunade awake and sober. When he arrived the receptionist glared at him but he ignored it. Is Tsunade Ba-chan busy? It wasn't that Naruto cared, but whenever she was occupied her voice would raise such high octaves that he would be deafened for a few seconds. Hence, he needed to know if the earplugs in his back pocket were necessary for this visit. The receptionist turned a deep shade of crimson but didn't answer. Naruto took that as no and strode into the office with his hands behind his head, eyes closed. When he stood there for a good 10 seconds and no yelling occurred, he opened his eyes. It would be something he'd regret doing later. Naruto almost vomited at what was taking place on the Hokage's desk. On the desk was the woman who he thought of as a mother clad in her underclothes. Naruto closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then opened them and nearly vomited again. He hurried to find something to write on that wasn't anywhere near the desk. Why Tsunade would sleep nearly naked in her office eluded him. She'd never been so drunk as to attempt to get naked on her desk. When he finally found the paper and wrote the note, he tried to use chakra to stick it to the wall. This failed because couldn't concentrate on the task at hand. Thinking quickly, he stuck it in the mailbox below the slot in the door. Out of sheer curiosity or stupidity, Naruto turned back to make sure he wasn't seeing things. That was his second mistake. What Naruto had not noticed before was that there was a body on top of the Godimes. How he missed something so blatantly obvious he didn't know. The body was clearly a male's and it had muscles over its entire frame, some even bulging out of places he didn't know muscles could grow. It was obviously someone who trained their body to the limit. Then he noticed behind the desk something that would divulge the person's identity. Sitting next to the window was a green spandex suit, orange leggings, and next to that sat what looked like a Junin's vest. Regretfully, Naruto looked up one more time because he had to make sure of the person's identity, not even paying attention to how close he was to the two bodies because of his examination of the clothes. The face was completely hidden by Tsunade's bust, but he could see the hair and that was all he needed. He was the only one with a bowl-shaped, shiny haircut and a Junin's vest in all of Konoha. This time Naruto did vomit all over the nearest object to his face, the Hokage's chair. When he was finished he ran out of the room with a surprising thought on his mind. I should ask Super Fuzzy Brows for some tips. Sakura groggily awoke and rolled over. The emptiness of the bed startled her at first, but then the memories of last night came back to her. Did Naruto really kiss me last night? She didn't know how she was going to face him today. She was positive he saw her blush. If he did, she probably couldn't even look at him. The urge to hit Naruto surfaced again. Sakura scowled. This is all his fault. Does he think it's alright to kiss me without my permission? The moment that ran through her head, the bubblegum-haired Kunoichi accidentally ripped the side of her sheets. Soon after, her common sense kicked in. It was she who climbed into his bed and stayed in his arms last night. Naruto hadn't taken advantage of her, albeit the kiss was pushing it a bit. His confession from last night surfaced to her conscious thoughts. She blushed. He said it's cute. Naruto? Sakura sighed mentally. You baka. Sakura was brought out of her thoughts when she heard her door opening. She gasped as Naruto stumbled in and fell onto the floor. His skin was an unhealthy tone of white. Its paleness nearly matched the walls of the room. He moaned, "SS Sakura-chan." Sakura's shock immobilized her for a moment. To her surprise, it was her other side that slapped her mentally and consequently woke her from her stupor. She jumped out of bed, tripped over the covers, and then turned the blonde over when she reached him. Her face scrunched up when an unpleasant smell emanated from his mouth. Sakura carried him back to the bed and mashed the help button until it stuck. A nurse clamored, and a few seconds later, seeing Naruto's face, she rushed to the side of the bed and performed a quick checkup. He seems to have thrown up whatever he had in his stomach. It wasn't much. I assume he didn't eat breakfast, which is why he feels so sick. She sighed. Why is he so pale then? Sakura asked. I couldn't find anything else wrong with his body other than his lack of food. It may have been shock coupled with hunger that knocked him out. He'll be fine. Naruto just needs food and rest, the nurse advised. Sakura sighed. The information that her teammate would be fine put her at ease. What kind of food do you have here in the hospital? Sakura and the nurse left before coming back with various foods ranging from hamburgers to dango. The nurse, whose name was Ayane, tried to feed Naruto the dango, but he merely sniffed it and turned away. Sakura held an apple up to Naruto's mouth. He bit down on it, made a disgusted face, and then spit it back out. The piece hit Sakura in the face. Sakura held back her anger, but inner Sakura was fighting against her. Chaw, that bastard just spit in my face. Kick his ass. Sakura managed to convince her other half that an ass kicking would only put Naruto in worse condition, not teach him a lesson. After several more occurrences with many different foods, Ayane and Sakura grew discouraged. They knew that if Naruto didn't eat anything, it would be unlikely that felt better anytime soon. Doesn't he eat anything? Ayane inquired. Sakura paused. Her eyes widened an inch. The pinkette palmed her forehead and ran out the hospital room without a word to her companion. After Sakura left, Ayane busied herself with staring at the boy in the bed. She was 26 and knew what happened during that awful tragedy years ago. She couldn't bring herself to hate the boy, however. He had, after all, indirectly saved the village that day, and even more impressively, directly a few weeks ago. About 15 minutes later, Ayane heard footsteps and a wheel cart coming down the hallway. Assuming that they were bound for Naruto's room, since it was the only room at the end of the corridor. Naruto had been in the hospital so much he had a reserved room. She stood up. A familiar yet strange smell wafted its way under the door, but Ayane couldn't place it. She knew she had smelled it before, but the food wouldn't come to mind. It was on the tip of her tongue. She was about to say it when a loud cry erupted from behind her. Ramen. Naruto was in the middle of a clearing in the forest. Normally that wouldn't be bad, except for the fact that he was surrounded by ghosts. Big, black-colored ghosts with glowing eyes and stick-like red arms. That in itself wasn't the worst part. In the area there was a giant bowl of ramen with every flavor and type added in. It was the perfect ramen. Something was wrong though. Naruto couldn't smell the ramen at all. It gave off steam, but the ghosts wouldn't let him smell or taste it. Naruto impulsively released a scream charged at the ghosts, eager to get his ramen. The blonde fought tooth and nail, but every time he would jump at the ramen bowl, the ghosts would knock him back and shove something else in his mouth. The first time it was dango, a sweet treat that he was not in the mood for. After that, one of the cocky ghosts laughed and shoved an apple in his mouth. He'd had enough. Kage Bunshin no Justu. 4 other Narutos appeared, and each took charge of the ghosts. At first, it seemed that the Bunshin were going to make it, but a huge blast of wind echoed throughout the clearing. All of the Bunshin dispersed and the real Naruto was thrown against a tree. You will not lay your hands on that ramen. A voice boomed. Naruto, breathing halted. Standing before him was the biggest ghost he'd ever seen. It was easily the size of the Hokage Tower. The other ghosts were insignificant compared to this one. Knowing he'd only have one shot at this, Naruto used a bit of his remaining chakra to summon a Bunshin. The ghosts just stared while Naruto gathered a ball of blue chakra in his hand. It started swirling and turning at unbelievable speeds. He looked up to see the big ghost backing up and took his chance. Rasengan. The small ball seemed to do nothing at first, but as it sunk deeper into the giant, it seemed to be sucking it up. Little by little, the biggest ghost disappeared, and the smaller ones all left with it. It took all he had just to stand up. He fell to the ground, knowing he wouldn't make it to his ramen. The weakness in his legs assured him of that. Unexpectedly, a bright light filled the forest and with it came two angels. One had bubble-gum tresses that went down to her shoulders. The other had crimson locks past her middle. It was then Naruto smelled the ramen. It was only faintly but still enough for him to tell it was what he was seeking. He realized that the angels were bringing his treat over to him and prepared himself for the best sensation of his life. Suddenly, a brighter light filled the area, leaving him staring at a tiled ceiling. Naruto didn't care where he was because at that moment the only thing he cared about was the intense smell his favorite food nearby. Ramen. Ayane was stunned, shocked, and sickened by Naruto's manner of eating. He'd already been through 4 bowls and it had been less than 2 minutes. She'd wondered why Sakura brought 15 bowls of ramen with her and now she knew. It was mind-boggling how much this child could stomach by himself. Ayane stared down at the boy as he put down his last bowl with a content sigh. His stomach seemed to be bulging out a little. He looked like a child who had gotten exactly what he wanted for Christmas. It was kind of cute the way he was laid out and caused her to giggle a little. Naruto's eyes settled on her. "Hey Nade-chan, what your name? I should know the name of the person who helped Sakura-chan and made me feel better." She smiled gently. "It's Ayane. I assume you're Naruto?" "Hi. My reputation as a ninja must be bigger than I thought," Naruto stated with a smile. "Actually I just know because you come here so often." Naruto deflated a little. "But I have heard stories about your success in the land of Wave." She quickly added. Naruto smiled brighter than before, if that was possible. He recounted the tale exactly as it had happened aside from Sakura not doing anything. He'd placed her in a role where she protected Tsunade bravely and even fought off one of Zabuza's strikes with a kunai while he and Sasuke were immobilized. Though she should have, Sakura didn't deny anything that was said about her. She was smiling beside the nurse. Naruto took a deep breath after he was finished. "Ayane Ne-chan. Do you mind if I talk to Sakura-chan alone for a minute?" Ayane looked to the pinkette and gave her a wink. Sakura threw a confused look the nurse's way. "Sure, I don't see why not. I have other things to take care of so I'll see you two around." Ayane turned to leave but Naruto caught her arm before she could. His grip wasn't demanding but Ayane still felt a little fearful at the sudden change in his disposition. However, she saw she was wrong when she turned back to meet Naruto's wide smile. Sakura watched the exchange with interest. "What is it, Naruto?" Ayane asked kindly. "Well, I was wondering. Whenever I'm in the hospital the nurses usually ignore me because they know about my condition." Ayane nodded. Sakura was puzzled. "I wanted to know, since you seem nice and all, could you take care of me whenever I get hurt and end up here?" Ayane looked down at the boy with caring eyes. She didn't know what she was expecting but it certainly hadn't been that. She ruffled his hair. "Of course I can. I'd be happy to take care of you whenever you manage to mess yourself up, Naruto." "Thanks Ayane Ne-chan." Ayane walked out feeling a little better about herself that day. It seemed the little ball of energy she just left brightened up her life if only a little bit. She was a bit happier. That child in there was no demon. He was only a little boy with enough determination and energy to make anything he wanted a reality. Naruto met Sakura's eyes when the door closed. The pinkette had no explanation at the sudden rush of nervousness that entered her system. "Why you didn't have to do that?" Sakura managed to say with a frown on. "Do what?" the blonde inquired confusedly. "Pretend like I was a hero on that mission. I didn't do much at all. At worst it was probably Tsunade who protected me," Sakura accused. "Do you regret it now?" Sakura's frown didn't leave her face. "Of course I do. If I had just been braver back then that's all that matters," Naruto interrupted. He dipped his head. "It just took you a little longer to get over your fear. We both didn't think that we'd be up against someone like Zabuza on our first mission. I didn't even think Kakashi-sensei could beat him." Sakura opened her mouth but the blonde continued. "You also protected us during the Chunin exams. There's no reason to say you were useless because that's not you anymore. You're stronger, Sakura-chan." The bubblegum-haired Kunoichi avoided his eyes. "You really think so?" Naruto nodded. "Hi." Sakura shifted on her feet for a few seconds. Silently, she made her way to the edge of Naruto's bed and took a seat on it. She fiddled with her bangs until Naruto moved his legs to allow her more room. She allowed a smile to grace her features. Arigato Naruto. You don't have to thank me, Sakura-chan. The bed has plenty enough room for you to sit down. Naruto's fox grin made its way onto his face. Sakura opened her mouth to explain that she was thanking him for making her feel better but decided against it. She shook her head and returned to playing with her hair until it was time for her to leave. Something told her that he already knew anyway. Sakura-chan, I have something to do until Ba-chan gives me a mission. The addressed Kunoichi stopped her fiddling. What are you going to do? Eat ramen all day? She joked. Naruto chuckled. No, I was gonna. Naruto stopped in mid-sentence. He scanned her face for a bit. This only made the pink-haired Kunoichi's cheeks tint a light red. His next sentence interrupted the action of her fist rising. Sakura-chan, you look exactly like the angel in my dream. Sakura was at a loss for words. She stuttered out a few incoherent sentences before finally succeeding at a rather simple one. An angel? Hi. She was really beautiful. She had big wings and could fly. Naruto waved his hands for emphasis. The best part was at the end when she brought me ramen. Sakura stared at Naruto before giggling quietly to herself. This lasted for a few seconds until her laughter could no longer be held behind her hand. It echoed around the room. Naruto was having a dream about her being a beautiful angel and she was only bringing him ramen? That was the world's most unpredictable hyperactive ninja for you. Although, it was comforting to know she was only bringing him food and not doing anything else. Sakura did a mental head shake. The blonde tilted his head. Sakura-chan, why are you laughing at my dream? I liked it. It took Sakura a few seconds to answer. The image of her as an angel and offering Naruto ramen still hadn't left in her mind. That's not important. She evaded the question. So what are you going to do? Well, I thought I should follow the way our team took to retrieve the Teme a couple of days ago and look for any clues. Anything that'll help us find him faster and drag him back. Sakura paused. She was certain Naruto could see the happiness behind her eyes, but she didn't want him to end up hurt again. Even if Sasuke and the other nin were long gone, there was still the threat of enemy ninja at the border of Fire Country. She shook her head. I don't want you to get hurt again. Naruto dropped his gaze to the blankets. I'll be fine, Sakura-chan. That's what I thought when you left the first time. Sakura asserted her point. Can't you just wait until Kakashi-sensei has free time? You can go with him. Naruto scowled. I think he's busy. I know Kakashi-sensei wants Sasuke Teme back as bad as we do, but he's got a lot of Junin missions to do. You can come if you want to. He finished with a smile. Sakura shook her head sadly. I wish I could, but while I was getting your ramen and Anbu stopped me. He told me I'd been summoned by Tsunade-sama at 12. I don't know what she would want with me. She hoped Tsunade didn't put her on a different team. She, Naruto and Sasuke, who she still considered part of their team, were like family. Naruto scratched the back of his head. That's alright. Well, I'm going to go look. I'll see you later, Sakura-chan. Naruto bolted out the hospital window before Sakura could object further. He was eager to get past the village gates. The blonde knew what Tsunade wanted to talk about with Sakura, and that was no big deal. However, he also knew the Godem would be none too happy about what he had left in her chair. With that thought in mind, Naruto doubled his speed towards the gates. Naruto trekked through the forest. He first came across where Choji had fought that big guy. All that seemed to be around was a giant hole in the earth. He took a closer look and found what appeared to be a broken glass case with crumbs of red, green, and yellow inside. I'd better take this back to the village and show Ba-chan. She might find it interesting. The blonde stowed it in one of his many jumpsuit pockets and moved on. About 10 minutes later he slipped and fell. He barely managed to right himself in the air before he hit the ground, effectively landing on his feet. His bewildered gaze swept the forest. What the hell did I slip on? He looked down to find something white stuck to his shoes. Naruto scrutinized the bit of gunk. He rubbed it against the nearest tree branch in an effort to remove it from one of the few pairs of shoes he owned, but gained no positive result. What the hell is this stuff? He looked closer. It didn't seem like bird poo, though it was certainly a sticky substance. Naruto allowed his eyes to pass over the area and came to the conclusion that he'd been here before. This was the place where Neji's fight had happened. If he remembered right, the gunk on his shoes had chakra flowing through it and was harder than steel. The only way Neji had broken it was probably using his own chakra. So if I want to get this stuff off my shoe, then I have to cut it with chakra. The blonde mentally groaned. He sucked at chakra control. He assumed that Neji had cut the web with his Jukin strikes, which only Hyuga were capable of. I guess this will have to be a clue. Maybe I can get Hinata to get it off. He continued through the forest. The trees shortened little by little as he jumped on. There were small slashes in some of them and large gashes in others. The blonde stopped, looked around, and then realized something. I'm completely lost. Naruto had been through the forest numerous times and almost always knew where he was going around Fire Country. However, the area he just jumped into had no trees, so he just landed on the ground. It was as if this section of the forest had been leveled completely. There were no landmarks or anything discerning that would tell him where to go further. Annoyed, the blonde turned around to head back to Konoha. He stopped in mid-pivot. Ooh, gotta pee. Naruto looked around, but there were no trees to go on. Normally this wouldn't be a problem since he could just pee on the ground. However, since there were no trees around, he would be spotted instantly if someone were to come across the clearing. The blonde debated with himself mentally. He scanned the area again. Everything seemed quiet and normal. Grass laid everywhere, a couple flowers and some bugs skittered along. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Quickly hoping nothing would happen, he turned around, pulled his pants down, and began to do his business. Had Naruto been paying closer attention, he would have seen the crimson turf sticking out from under one of the fallen trees. He would have heard the groan as the sleeping and injured figure awoke and opened its eyes for the first time in 4 days. He would have noticed the small, inaudible gasp as the first thing those brown eyes would see in 96 hours would be his prepubescent ass. What the fuck? Naruto's spine nearly leapt from his skeleton when the voice reached his ears. It wasn't so much the voice that scared him but the fact he was turned away from it, leaving the owner to stare at his bare ass. In the middle of his fright, he took a minute to think of who this person was. Her voice seemed familiar but not friendly familiar. A cold chill swept through the blonde. His knees started clacking together. This person was a she and she was staring at his ass while he just continued to urinate in front of her. What the hell, shithead? I thought Orochimaru-sama knew cruel ways to torture, but I see your dumbass village has their own sick ways to fucking get information from people. Did they really send you out here to flash your saggy ass thinking it would get me to fucking talk? Naruto took this offensively. In his own opinion, he had a very luscious ass with nice shape and firmness. Did shinobi even have saggy asses? Don't saggy asses slow people down? That would only be a hindrance during a mission. Maybe there was some sort of saggy ass jutsu? Jiraiya's age was at least the 50s and he knew many jutsu. Though that would mean in order to perform the jutsu he'd have to have. Naruto dry heaved at where his circular logic had taken him. He swiftly turned around to retort. His empathy kicked in, however, when he recognized the girl. Tayuya, if he remembered her name right, looked as if she could be in better shape. There was a tree firmly planted around her middle. He assumed that's what happened to her now disfigured legs. Mud splotched her disheveled hair in different places. Her clothes were tattered and her only weapon, the battle flute, laid cleanly cut in 2 not 5 feet from her. It also looked like she was running a pretty high fever considering how red her face was. Before Naruto's evaluation, Tayuya expected him to leave because his saggy ass interrogation failed. In truth, Tayuya had seen worse asses, mainly from Jirobo walking outside his bathroom naked many times claiming he forgot a towel. However, no matter how nice or terrible his ass may have been, Tayuya wasn't going to give in. Orochimaru had put her through worse things. After Naruto finished his business, she thought that he was going to pull up his pants and leave. Instead, he did the most unpredictable a thing at the moment. He turned around, pants still at his ankles. To say Tayuya was stunned would be an understatement. How far would this one ninja go to get his information? It wasn't as if Tayuya hadn't seen a man's genitals before. She had seen enough in Orochimaru's private collection of his men's only Ichi paradise. She suspected he wrote himself. Though it was mind-boggling why a mere child would possess something she'd thought only the well-endowed men in the pink books owned. It took Naruto a minute to notice Tayuya was not paying attention to him. He cleared his throat loudly. This caused the redhead to look up so fast she got whiplash. She was a little embarrassed that she got caught staring at Naruto's crotch. The blonde didn't seem to notice until he felt cool air travel up the rift in his ass. He then looked down to find that his pants and underwear were not where they were supposed to be. His high-pitched scream rivaled that of Sasuke's screaming fangirls. I am sorry, I didn't know that. Naruto started pulling his pants back up. It only took Tsuande a couple seconds to process what he said and regain her train of thought. What the fuck do you mean you didn't know? How the hell do you not know you're wearing pants? I was wearing pants. They just weren't around my waist. Just shut the fuck up and leave already. In his flustered state, all Naruto could think to do was comply. His body stopped the minute he took his first step. The redhead behind him, Tsuande, was likely the best clue he could find on his excursion. She was the last member of her team and likely had information on where Sasuke was taken. He could try to and get something out of her. Maybe he could even get her to tell him everything about Orochimaru's plans. Naruto turned back around. What's your name? Even though he was pretty sure what her name was, Naruto didn't want to accidentally call her something different. Jiraiya had told him calling a woman by another name, especially during intimate moments, could be deadly. Even if said woman was not a kunoichi. The blonde hardly ever took anything to heart that the perverted hermit said, but Jiraiya had said this seriously. Naruto assumed that the older male had made that mistake a few times before. Tsuande was surprised that the blonde shinobi was still there. Would he flash her again? The redhead didn't think she could handle that. She steeled her resolve and spoke in what she hoped was a menacing tone. What's it to you, shithead? I just wanted to know. That's all. I'm not telling you shit. Go fuck yourself, Tsuande coldly stated. Please? No. Please? No. Please? No. This continued for about an hour. At the beginning, Tsuande decided she could play this childish game for as long as he could, but the blonde's persistence was unbelievable. She quickly grew annoyed after the first 30 minutes and just stopped answering. In return, Naruto just talked about meaningless junk. It ranged from ramen to someone called Ero Sennin. She'd finally had enough. Tsuande, excuse me? Tsuande cursed under her breath. If this she was going to break so easily, then an interrogation would be unnecessary. They could just stick her in a room with this idiot for long enough and she'd go insane. She masked her coming sigh with a growl. My name is Tsuande, you shithead. Naruto grinned. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the future Hokage. Nice to meet you, Tsuande. While Naruto had been busy introducing himself, Tsuande was mentally calculating her chances of getting this alive. They weren't high. She was certain of that. The blonde could do anything to her that he wanted and she could only lie there helplessly. That realization stung Tsuande's ego and forced her to realize that in the worst of cases she would be used as a toy. She met his eyes with defiance, but her voice came out uncertain. What do you want? I just want to know what Orochimaru wants to do with my friend. Naruto answered immediately. Your friend? Sasuke. Naruto replied. Tsuande had a pretty good guess of Orochimaru's plans with the Uchiha, but she resolved to be adamant about not telling him. Orochimaru trusted her and those other assholes that she was put together with, and she wouldn't betray that trust. Where the hell were her teammates anyway? Those bastards always did let shit like this happen to her. Naruto watched as she gazed around the clearing as if she were waiting for someone to help. He sighed. They're dead. Tsuande turned an angry and confused scowl his way. What the fuck do you mean dead? What are you talking about, shithead? Naruto's face was grim. Your teammates. Every one of them died. We didn't kill them intentionally, but we had to defend ourselves. Tsuande looked at him as if he were joking. When his face stayed serious, she simply huffed and attempted to turn away. Needless to say, the tree planted on her body didn't allow her much moving room. The most she could manage was a slight shifting motion. Serves them right. Getting killed by shitty genin like you. Weren't they your friends? Naruto asked. Hell number. We might have liked each other enough not to kill one another, but that was as far as it went. As far as I'm concerned, those bastards can rot in hell for the shit they put me through. Tsuande replied. As she spoke, her scowl only deepened. What did they put you through? Well, first they. Tsuande stopped. The blonde ninja had gotten a lot more out of her than she was comfortable with. How the hell did he do that? One minute she was ignoring him and the next she was regaling things about her personal life. She met his eyes and hardly muffled a gasp. She'd never been one to be able to read emotions, but she knew when certain things weren't on a person's features. No hate, anger, or disappointment lingered in his blue orbs. There was only genuine curiosity in them and maybe a bit of concern. Tsuande forcefully tore her gaze from his. That's none of your business, she muttered with all the coldness she could muster. Naruto sighed. She'd become her cold self again. He'd have to take her home too so that she wouldn't die out here. Tsuande might be cold now, but Naruto had brightened colder people's lives. Hopefully she wouldn't be any different. He mentally added getting her to both open up and tell him as much as she could about Sasuke to his list of short-term goals. Tsunade could probably heal her too. Naruto smirked. How about I get you out from under that tree? It doesn't look very comfortable. Tsuande's baffled look betrayed her anger. An enemy nin who was offering to help her. She muttered something. What was that? The redhead's fierce expression returned. How stupid are you, shithead? Enemies aren't supposed to help each other. As soon as I get out from under this tree, I'll probably kill you in the worst way I can think of. I won't hold back just because you're helping me. The blonde chuckled. I don't think we're enemies anymore. As for the killing, well, I like to take chances. I think I can take you. Naruto summoned 10 Bunshin. They lifted the tree out of the way without too much effort. As soon as the tree was offered to Tsuande tried to stand up but failed miserably. She couldn't even stand up? What the hell? The cursed seal would normally have healed her legs somewhat by now. The redhead got a sick feeling in the bottom of her stomach. Something was wrong. She had a feeling she was no longer connected to her master. It felt like the connection between her and Orochimaru had been severed. Naruto laughed at Tsuande's expense. She seemed so helpless right now. He knew firsthand how dangerous the redhead could be, but he knew she couldn't do anything in her current condition. His laughter only increased when she attempted to get back on her feet again. Tsuande was about to let loose a flurry of obscenities, but Naruto's laughter ceased when they were on the tip of her tongue. He turned around and muttered something Tsuande couldn't make out. He was stuttering about something and the only word she could make out was, shirt. She looked down and gasped. Neither one of them had noticed how bad Tsuande's clothes really were. Her pants were fine. The damage done to them was minimal. Her shirt was a different case. Thanks to the Tamari, her shirt was torn in many places. One of these places included a rather large rip in the right side where her right breast was sticking out. Tsuande cursed loudly and looked around for something to cover herself with but could find nothing. The redhead chastised herself mentally. She couldn't remember if she'd gone without a bra the day of retrieving Sasuke or whether Temari's wind had cast it aside. The former seemed more plausible given the fact that it wasn't likely that the piece of clothing blew away and left her shirt on. Her eyes shot back up to Naruto to make sure he wasn't staring. His back was turned to her and he was holding out something. It was the orange jacket he had on moments ago. She hastily grabbed it and slipped it around her frame. Tsuande didn't want to chance him getting another eyeful. Naruto's chuckles broke the awkward silence. Tsuande's face flushed in embarrassment. It was an emotion that the redhead didn't show often. Thankfully, Naruto remained turned around until his laughter had stopped and her face regained its normal color. That's kind of funny, you know. He spoke around a giggle. Tsuande's temper flared. Fuck you. Is it funny because you got to peep, you perverted asshole? If you look again, I swear I'll kill you. Naruto turned around. His face was calm. I am not a pervert. I gave you my jacket, didn't I? Tsuande opted to say nothing. Her angry expression didn't falter. I was laughing because I remember someone telling me that it's impossible to forget you're wearing pants. You didn't notice that, half of your chest was sticking out, so we're even. Tsuande's defiant gaze met his. No. Naruto scratched the back of his head. But it's the same. No, it's not. It's different. The redhead replied stubbornly. Naruto's confusion only grew. Half of your. Stop saying it like that. Tsuande interrupted. I don't have halves of my chest, you dumbass. Say it right or don't say it at all. Naruto felt the indirect blow to his masculinity. He frowned. Fine. One of your breasts was sticking out. Does that make you feel better, Tsuande? An awkward silence filled the air. They both pretended to not notice the other's light blush. Tsuande moved her hands over the jacket to make sure it was still secure. Meanwhile, Naruto busied himself with staring around the clearing. It had to be past 1 already. Tsuande turned over, cursing in pain all the while. Her eyes faced the direction of the sound hideout. Just leave me alone, shithead. You're annoying. She heard Naruto's sigh behind her and assumed he was leaving. Tsuande nearly panicked when she felt his arms grab her by the waist and flip her over. Her first instinct was to kick and scream, but the sincerity in Naruto's eyes, as well as the fact that she couldn't move her legs, prevented her from doing so. I'm taking you back to Konoha. You'll die out here. Naruto was surprised to see fear spark in her eyes. Hell no. If you take me to that village I'll get tortured for information I don't know. You might as well kill me right now. Tsuande broke their shared gaze. You seem like a nice little shit, so just put me out of my misery. She mumbled. Naruto knew that she was right. After having met a shinobi from the interrogation department, he knew how terrible an experience it could be. Not firsthand, but he was sure anything he could imagine would be 100 times worse. The scars he'd seen on Ibiki's skull that day never left his mind. He shivered involuntarily at the thought of Tsuande undergoing that torture. I'll keep you safe. I can henge you so that no one will notice and give you a safe place to stay. During that time I want some information though. Deal? Tsuande's frown wasn't as deep as it had been earlier in their conversation. Why would I want to go to your sorry excuse for a village when I can just wait for Orochimaru-sama to come get me himself? Tsuande spoke again in that tone of uncertainty. Naruto pitied her. An exasperated sigh escaped his lips. It's been 4 days and that bastard still hasn't come looking for you. Do you think he really cares? Tsuande was about to interject but Naruto interrupted her. If you're that sure he'll come, you can come to my village anyway. Then you can think of some excuse of why you're staying in Konoha. She thought about it for a minute. When Orochimaru did come she could just say she was undercover. As soon as her curse seal started working again she could contact him and inform him about her whereabouts. For now though she really had no choice. Naruto was right. Another few days out here and she would die of starvation. Tsuande stared down at her broken appendages. As long as you promise you won't let them take me. Tsuande hated the fact that she was showing any sign of weakness. She had no choice though. I promise. You'll be in my apartment the whole time. Naruto mentally tacked on another promise to keep. The redhead's eyes darted toward her disfigured limbs. What are you going to do about my broken legs, shithead? It's no normal injury and with the chakra flow in them virtually non-existent it's fucking hopeless. Naruto shook his head. I know someone who can help. She's great with medicine. Your legs should be fine after we see her. Tsuande's surprise was quickly hidden by the uncaring facade she put on. TCH. Whatever. Wait just a minute. I'll be right back. Naruto took off into the forest until Tsuande couldn't see him anymore. She assumed he probably needed to finish his business and was grateful he didn't do it there. A couple minutes later he returned with a content grin. Tsuande didn't understand how someone could constantly be happy. He must live a good life. Naruto squatted down in front of her. All right. It looks like I won't be able to carry you on my back with your injured limbs, so I'll just take you this way. Before Tsuande could protest, Naruto had picked her up bridal style and already started running towards the village. He bounded through the clearing until he reached the trees and then started jumping on branches. The redhead involuntarily clutched him harder. She did manage to shout in his ear. Hey dipshit, who said you could carry me like this? Are you trying to feel me up? Naruto stayed quiet. It didn't seem he wanted to partake in the conversation. After several more attempts she stopped altogether. At that moment, Tsuande felt another chakra signature about 50 feet behind them that seemed very similar to his. Hey do you? I know, was all he said. Tsuande was furious. Who hell was following them? She doubted he would tell her even if she asked. She had a right to know if he brought someone else to see her. She was supposed to be safe with him. The redhead decided that if words wouldn't work, action would have to suffice. Tsuande brought her hand back with the full intention of slugging Naruto. The worst case scenario would be him dropping her. That wouldn't happen because she wouldn't hit him that hard. Not out of compassion but because she knew in her injured state a 10-foot fall wouldn't exactly put her in better condition. Naruto watched her as she reared her fist back. He raised an eyebrow. I wouldn't do that. You might hurt yourself. Tsuande's punch faltered in the air for that brief second. The next thing she knew, her vision veiled by a red curtain. Who the hell did he think he was? Hurt herself? By throwing a goddamn punch. The idiot must have forgotten who he was talking to. She was Tsuande, a battle-hardened kunoichi. Did he think that throwing a half-hearted punch would hurt her? That she was delicate? That she was just another girl? Those thoughts circulating through her head only made Tsuande angrier. She felt the blonde holding her shudder in fear, and that brought a brief feeling of satisfaction to her. This only lasted for a second. Then Tsuande's vision was obscured by red again. She re-readied her punch and slammed it into the blonde's face. Her satisfaction grew when she heard the crunching of his teeth. This faded, however, when she no longer felt the support of his arms and white smoke billowed around her body. Now she was falling through the trees. At the speed she was going, it would be a miracle if she didn't break her arms too. This was going to hurt. All because the little dipshit had decided to be smart and replace himself with a bunchin. Tsuande closed her eyes and grit her teeth in preparation. She didn't register that she'd been caught until Naruto gently placed her body up against a tree. When she finally looked up, the blonde was wearing a look of disapproval. "I wanted to trust you," he sighed. Tsuande's eyebrows knit. "I didn't think I could trust you either, shithead. That bunchin just made you lose what little you had." "But you punched the bunchin," Naruto argued. "Only because it wouldn't tell me who was behind us. What if it was a threat or if you brought someone else? I still don't trust you, so what was I supposed to do? And the damn thing antagonized me." Tsuande poked his leg. "It wasn't my fault." The blonde prepared to argue back, but a flood of memories came to him. They were exactly like Tsuande's explanation. He put a hand to his head and groaned. He didn't know where the memories came from, but they were evidence that Tsuande was right. The blonde grumbled silently to himself. "Alright, I guess I owe you an apology then." "Damn right you do. Let's hear it." Tsuande did her best to sit up and cross her arms. Naruto sighed. "Gomen Tsuande. My bunchin wasn't as nice as he should have been. He was an asshole." Tsuande corrected. Naruto sighed again. "Okay, my bunchin was an asshole." Tsuande nodded in acceptance. "Good, now let's go, and watch your hands. I'll cut off anything that—" "Not a pervert," Naruto reminded her while putting his arm under the crook of her knees. Tsuande grunted but didn't counter his statement. Naruto brought her body against his shoulders. She didn't resist as she was pulled into his embrace. Her body lay still against his chest. The blonde silently started the run back to Konoha. Tsuande busied herself with counting the number of heartbeats she could feel through his chest. It seemed like they hadn't traveled far before he set her down again. "What's wrong?" Tsuande asked a little apprehensively. She hoped he hadn't changed his mind about keeping her safe. "We're about a mile from Konoha, so I'll henge you right now," Naruto answered. "Don't act out of character if you want to stay undercover." Henge. It took a minute for the smoke to clear. When it did, Naruto was staring at a girl that looked exactly like Tsuande except the differences in her eyes and hair. Tsuande's hair was now black and her eyes were green. She also seemed a bit shorter, but it wasn't noticeable unless someone really took time to evaluate her. Her intrigued eyes stared back at his. Naruto smiled. "You look pretty cute with green eyes," the blonde teased her. Tsuande had trouble making a coherent sentence, much like another kunoichi had earlier. She growled lowly. "Shut up, shithead," Tsuande stuttered out. Naruto laughed. "Okay, there are guards at the gate and they are the only people that should stop us along the way. It's probably Izumo and Kotetsu. They're always guarding this gate." Tsuande laughed at him. "You're treating this like a mission. You know what will happen if you get caught," Naruto reminded her. "I don't think the interrogation is lenient on girls. No matter what age. Stay quiet." Tsuande shut her trap. When Naruto got to the entrance to the village, the guards looked at him curiously. The blonde shifted her in his arms and waited for the inevitable teasing that would occur. Sure enough, Izumo stepped forward, a teasing smirk on his features. "Say, Naruto, who's that pretty girl you're carrying in your arms?" he asked. "We've never seen her with you before. Did you finally find someone interested in your hyperactive attitude?" Kotetsu teased him. Naruto laughed along with them. He was about to reply when Tsuande interrupted him. She was going to get back at him for teasing her earlier. "Oh yes, I met Naruto a little over a week ago." Naruto broke into a light sweat as she continued talking. He knew no good could come of this. He seemed pretty interesting, so I asked his name and from there we became great friends. Soon after he took me back to his apartment and we had mind-blowing over and over again. You wouldn't believe what he can do with his tongue. Naruto paled. Tsuande smirked and kept going. "Oh, but my little Naruto isn't always in control. At times like these I like to take him out into the forest and fuck his brains out. He likes it when I dominate him." At this point both Izumo's and Kotetsu's jaws were hanging freely. Naruto was beet red and Tsuande was trying her hardest to keep a straight face. She'd heard many things growing up in the sound hideouts and was silently congratulating herself for remembering. She noticed the stunned guards were staring at her obviously disfigured legs. "Oh, you must be wondering about my legs. Sometimes Naruto-kun gets carried away and gets a little rough, but it's not like I don't like it, she said with the biggest smile she could muster. The guards were positively floored. Was she wearing the kid's jacket? What the hell did this kid do to get a girl like her? Did she have any friends? The first one was about to ask when Naruto interrupted him. Excuse me, Naruto managed before running to his apartment. When they arrived he sat Tsuande on the floor and looked for the key. The entire time he hadn't said a word to her. The only thing he had done was glare at her. Tsuande examined the apartment building while he was searching for the key. It didn't look like anyone could have a happy life here. Tsuande tore herself from that thought in favor of teasing Naruto. What's wrong, shithead? I thought that was pretty funny. Naruto banged his head on the door. Did you see the looks they were giving me? Kami knows they're going to tell Ba-chan and then I'll get the stuff beat out of me for no reason. Your grandmother can kick your ass? Tsuande asked, looking amused. That's not the point. Anyway, let's just go inside and you can look around where you'll be staying for, well, whenever you feel better. Naruto opened the door and picked Tsuande up bridal style again. When he got inside and closed the door he set her down not so gently on the ragged couch in the living room. The redhead released a short yelp of pain. Fuck, did you forget about my fucking legs? Naruto ignored her. I'll let you rest up a bit, but in an hour we're heading to see Ba-chan so she can heal your injuries. Tsuande remained quiet so Naruto decided to relax a bit. A hot shower was just what he needed. After Tsunade found none other than Maida guy on top of her, she'd punched him out the window. It sent him flying out into the middle of one of the largest Konoha shopping districts naked. She ignored the cries of disgust, and some of excitement, from the female populace of Konoha and searched for her sake. She would need it after what had happened this morning. After she came back from the store, Shizune had hidden her sake again. She was about to start on the paperwork she loathed so much. Tsunade sat down only to hear a squish when butt met chair. Thinking about it, her office had smelled weird that morning. She'd just brushed it off as the smell of guy without his clothes on. The man did sweat a lot. Looking down, she noticed her favorite pants were ruined because she'd just sat in vomit. Only one person came to mind that would be stupid enough to vomit in the Hokage's chair, and he was going to get the ass-kicking of the century. It was then she noticed a note sticking out of her mailbox and went to pick it up. She already knew who it was from and he'd better hope it explained why there was thrown-up ramen in her chair. Ba-chan, what were you thinking? It's disrespectful enough to have done that on top of the Hokage's desk, but to have done it with super fuzzy brows? Do you not get any in your old age? I thought Eros Sennin was interested in you. It would have been better than super fuzzy brows. On second thought, seeing two old Sannin sleeping together this morning would probably have killed me. I was wondering if you could do me a favor, Ba-chan. Could you train Sakura-chan? She has no one to train with since Kakashi-sensei is always on missions and all the other Junin are busy with their teams. It would really help her out and she has great potential. I was also going to ask Eros Sennin to train me, but I think he'd refuse. If you could use your, womanly charm to help him decide, I would really appreciate it. Don't worry, if you can convince someone who is always talking about youthfulness to sleep with you, a pervert hermit will be cake. P.S. Could you clean your desk? As the future Hokage, I'd rather not have old lady juices and fuzzy pubic hair on my desk. Naruto. She supposed it explained the vomit in her chair, but she would still kick his ass for it. As for Sakura, she did show the traits of a medical ninja. Maybe with hard work she could eventually surpass Shizune. She reread the last part of the letter and frowned. There was no way in hell she would use her womanly charms to convince Jiraiya to train Naruto. He would just have to find a way to do it himself. After all this, she called an assistant into her office to clean up the mess and then started on her paperwork. 30 minutes later, after the boredom started to set in, she ordered an Anbu to go and retrieve Sakura so they could talk. After another 10 minutes, Sakura walked in the door in confusion. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama? Hi. It seems our favorite blonde-haired shinobi has an interest in you. Sakura blushed at these words. This didn't go unnoticed by Tsunade. Tsunade-sama knows how Naruto and I slept that night. Is that so? Hi. He thinks you have the potential to become a great ninja and wanted me to oversee your training. Do you agree? Sakura's eyes widened. Naruto said that about me? Hi. So do you agree? To what? To me training you, of course, Tsunade answered irritably. She knew the girl wasn't stupid. Why, you would do that for me? Well, if Naruto says you have determination and the potential to become a great ninja, then I believe him. He has always been an excellent judge of character, and you also seem to have the traits to become a medical ninja. Do you agree? I would love to be trained under you, Hokage-sama. Sakura bowed quickly. Good. You will not refer to me as Hokage-sama but as Tsunade-sama or Tsunade-sensei. Your training will begin at 12 every afternoon, and until I can find out how to make more time for it, will end at 1:30, the blonde informed, chin resting on intertwined fingers. The pinkette did another quick bow. Arigato Tsunade-sama. Get some rest tonight. Assuming from your position with Naruto this morning, it doesn't seem like you got a lot of it. This didn't have the desired effect Tsunade hoped for. She expected Sakura to get angry and start complaining about how perverted the boy was. Not to blush and start stuttering. Maybe there was something there she wasn't seeing. It's okay, Sakura. I'll see you at 12 sharp tomorrow. Hi, Tsunade-sama. She managed to get out of the door and left the tower in a hurry. Sakura hoped that Tsunade hadn't seen her face. It was redder than her shirt. Not 5 minutes after Sakura left, Naruto walked in holding a girl with black hair and green eyes in his arms. She was clinging to him. From what Tsunade could see, the girl had broken legs and several injuries. She was wearing one of his black t-shirts and some tattered black pants. Ba-chan, could you help me out a little? After Naruto had left the shower, he saw Tayuya fast asleep on the couch. She actually looked nice when she wasn't yelling or scowling at him. He'd like to just open that jacket and suckle on. No, no, no. Bad thoughts. I've been hanging around Eros Senin for too long. Should probably give those Icha books a break too. He did a mental head shake. Now Naruto was by no means a pervert. He was just going through something that happens to every boy at age 13 called puberty. He only read those books for the stories anyway. Not for the steamy scenes in between. He didn't skip them though, that would be not completing the book. Tayuya, wake up. Tayuya groaned and slowly opened her eyes. What do you want, shithead? I'm trying to take a nap. It's time to go. We gotta go see Ba-chan so she can fix your legs. Fine, but I need some clothes. I'm not going in this shitty orange jacket. Who wears this stuff anyway? Naruto shook his head. You can borrow one of my shirts. I'll be right back. The blonde left to rummage through his closet. All he found were several orange jackets and some black shirts. It would be a little big for Tayuya, but it would keep her covered. Here, Naruto threw it to her. Naruto waited a minute. Tayuya just looked at him like he was stupid. She knit her eyebrows. Well, are you gonna turn around, shithead? You're not getting another peek, the redhead asserted. The blonde flushed scarlet. Gee Gomen, I forgot. Naruto turned around. Tayuya sighed at his idiocy. The redhead was quick in removing both of her tops and putting on the oversized one. She didn't want the blonde to see her exposed again. Okay, let's go, shithead. I doubt this bitch can fix my legs, but it's worth a try. Alright then, let's go. Naruto picked her up and jumped out the window, running full speed toward the Hokage Tower. If it had been any other person to call the woman he thought of as a mother a bitch, he would have used Rasengan on their asses. However, in the short time Naruto had known her, he assumed it was the only way she knew how to communicate after having to live by Orochimaru most of her life. You didn't generally pick up good grammar from an evil egomaniac and his thugs. When they arrived, Naruto was careful to walk a bit more gently up the stairs. A flash of pink turning a nearby corner immediately caught his eye. He was about to follow when Tayuya interrupted. Your Ba-chan lives in a pretty nice place here. Where the hell are we? The Hokage Tower, Naruto answered. Tayuya's blood went cold. The Hokage? The blonde started walking again. Hi, was the little shit actually going to turn her in after he had gone through the trouble of sneaking her into the village? It didn't seem like he was going to at first. Tayuya shook her head sadly. She should be surprised. Throughout her life it wasn't like anyone showed her any kindness aside from Orochimaru, and she couldn't even contact him. The little fighting spirit, she had disappeared in that instant. She was in the center of an enemy village and there just wasn't any chance in getting away. She knew that. Still, for some reason Naruto's betrayal hurt her more than she would have thought. The partial trust she'd given him had been shattered. Naruto noticed her crestfallen look. Tayuya, are you okay? The anger that entered her system quickly died. Tayuya turned away. I knew you were going to turn me in. I just knew it, but I was fucking stupid. I deserved to die. Naruto was stunned. What? He sat her down on the receptionist's desk. The woman was absent today. What makes you think I'm turning you in? He whispered. Why else would we be in the Hokage tower? Tayuya snapped, rage returning. Naruto frowned. I keep my promises to Yuya. A pang hit his heart. Tayuya thought she imagined the bit of sadness that had surfaced in his eyes. Or at least I do my best to. I'm not turning you in. Ba-chan is the Hokage and she's going to fix your legs. That's it. Naruto swept her into his arms and moved toward the doors. Tayuya's grip on his neck was stronger than before. Tsunade gave them an annoyed look when they entered the office. Tayuya took a minute to evaluate the woman. She had the biggest set of boobs she had ever seen. It made her look down at her own chest subconsciously. Even though she didn't look at this woman gave an aura of power that had made her a little frightened. She seemed to be the perfect balance between beauty and strength. Ba-chan, can you help me out a little? Tayuya looked back at the woman again. She looked nothing like a grandmother. At most she could only be in her early 30s. Who's that girl in your arms? Tsunade inquired. Naruto's sharp intake nearly made Tayuya palm her forehead. Of course he wouldn't have planned this ahead of time. Oh, this is Kiara and I found her in the woods earlier. She had a couple injuries so I brought her here so you could heal her. Tsunade turned to Tayuya. Kiara-san, can you tell me why you have 2 broken legs and several fractured bones? It took Tayuya a minute to remember her fake name. She winced as Naruto shifted her in his arms. This only made the act more convincing. I was walking in the woods on my way out of fire country when there was a huge wind around me. Several trees fell down and unluckily one fell on me as well. I woke up a couple hours ago to find Naruto, thank Kami she remembered his name, heading to Konoha with me in his arms. Tayuya said in a sweet voice. Tayuya allowed herself a quick smirk at Naruto's face. He was clearly surprised. He must have thought she didn't know how to be proper. It was necessary during missions that were assassinations and information retrieval. One needed to gather information on their target and not attract attention. The redhead didn't blame him though. Not after all the cursing she'd done on the way over here. Let's head to a hospital room and see what we can do. Minutes later Tayuya was laying on her back in nothing but a hospital gown and a new pair of underclothes. Tsunade was concentrating chakra into her hand and checking Tayuya's condition. Her expression hadn't changed from a frown from when she'd begun the examination, and that was 10 minutes ago. Are you able to heal me, Hokage-sama? Tayuya asked. Her heartbeat quickened when Tsunade hadn't immediately said anything. It'll take some time. Your chakra coils are a bit tangled but nothing too serious. It's the fact that there's virtually no chakra in your legs that bothers me. I should be able to fix it, but you'll have to see me every Saturday of the month. The bones in your legs were broken, but I've mended them for the most part. Don't walk by yourself for a few days. You were lucky to survive that incident. The only women I know to have survived such occurrences were all kunoichi. Really now? Tayuya asked nervously. Tsunade rose. Until you're better, I'm putting you in Naruto's care. He is a capable shinobi, if not a bit unorthodox, but he gets the job done. Naruto, are you okay with that? Tsunade looked over to see Naruto had fallen asleep on the other hospital bed in the room. He must have been exhausted after having transported this girl from the border of fire country. I'm sure you won't mind. Until tomorrow you can both stay in this hospital room. After that you have to find another place because we may need this room for other patients. Tayuya nodded and the blonde woman left the room. Maybe the little shit wasn't so bad. He risked his life and career as a ninja just to keep her alive, and he hardly knew her. She would thank him for it one day. Maybe buy him some of that ramen he rambled on about on the way to the village. Tayuya did her best to maneuver without causing herself too much pain. Her body ached and she assumed it was because the last 4 days were spent under a tree. She sighed as she found a soft spot. Naruto's light snoring combined with her exhaustion soon lulled her to sleep. Sakura was on her way to talk to her new sensei about Naruto. She hadn't seen him ever since he left to search for clues that morning. Her worry was beginning to set in. The bubblegum-haired kunoichi knew she should have stopped him. He was always the impulsive one. When Sakura entered the office it was roughly 9 o'clock. Tsunade-sama? Tsunade was halfway into her green jacket. The windows were already closed and the desk had nothing on it. What is it, Sakura? I was about to go home since it's so late. The pinkette clasped her arms behind her back. I was just wondering if you've seen Naruto around. I haven't seen him since this morning. He came in here earlier with a girl he found injured in the woods. I swear she looked like his girlfriend clinging to him like that. Sakura's stomach did a little flip at this comment. They're in hospital room 231 now. I'll come with you since I haven't checked on him in a while. The two kunoichi left the Hokage office and headed in the direction of the hospital. Tsunade chose not to call attention to Sakura's fast pace. She could easily keep up with the girl anyway. When they arrived, Shizune came out of a hospital room nearby, clipboard in hand. She bowed to Tsunade. Did you need me, Hokage-sama? Tsunade tapped her apprentice on the head roughly. What have I told you about calling me that? Anyway, I'm off duty right now. No need for formalities. The Hokage is never— Shizune stopped herself when Tsunade glared at her. She sighed. I've heard Tsunade-sama has taken you under her wing, Sakura-chan. Congratulations. Sakura blushed at the praise. Arigato Shizune-senpai, but it wouldn't have happened without Naruto. Shizune giggled. Tsunade had informed her of the thrown-up ramen in her chair. She chose to keep the tidbit about Guy private even though the news had already spread like wildfire. I'm aware of that. Speaking of the Gaki, Tsunade interrupted. We're going to check on him right now. He brought in a girl today that was pretty beat up. They're resting in the room down the hall. Shizune silenced her coming squeal. She waved a hand in front of her face excitedly. Naruto-kun has a girlfriend. What's her name? Sakura's stomach flipped again. All three women ventured until they reached Naruto's room. Tsunade put her hand on the doorknob. She abruptly stopped turning the handle when Naruto's groaning echoed of the walls of his hospital room. Several soft thumps were heard in perfect synchronization with the blonde's moans. All three women paused to consider the possibilities. Naruto's strangled voice rang out. Or else, gonna blow. The next voice sounded like the other girl, Kiera. It was barely heard. Better wait, not ready. At this point all three women had a general idea what was going on in the room. Tsunade wanted to kill him, Shizune was hoping he was using protection, and Sakura was feeling an odd emotion between jealousy and heartbreak. Shizune moved in front of her sensei and cracked open the door. She released a loud gasp. It was enough to divert both teenagers' attention from each other to the door. Naruto awoke to a warm sensation at his side. He figured Sakura had made her way into his bed that night and put his arm around the figure next to him. Feeling happy, he fell back asleep. Tayuya awoke to find herself in a rather strange position in Naruto's bed. That wasn't anything to fuss about because she made her way to his bed earlier. She wasn't going to be separated from him because he was her only protection. The only one who knew who she was. No, the strange thing was that Naruto's arm rested around her middle. She was about to maneuver herself around but decided against it because it was so damn cold in the hospital. Naruto emitted a sort of inner warmth that spread to anyone he was touching. She was quite comfortable. Minutes later Naruto awoke to see black hair by his side instead of pink. He remembered Tayuya had come into his bed for some reason that night. Despite the fact that he and the Oto Kunoichi didn't get along too well, he couldn't help but be curious about her. Her breathing indicated that she was sleeping. He thought that removing his arm would be the smart choice, but apparently Tayuya was fond of it. He couldn't get it out of her grip without waking her. Naruto got the urge to use the bathroom and attempted to get up only to be stopped by Tayuya's hand on his chest. His surprise at her reflexes showed. Tayuya allowed herself a mental smirk before pushing him back down behind her. Don't get up. It's cold as fuck in this hospital and I'm not comfortable with being alone for any amount of time in this shithole. You said you would protect me, right? I did, but should we be? You're not a pervert, remember? Tayuya asked. Naruto shook his head. Then I don't care. I still don't completely trust you, but I'm not trying to freeze to death in this place. Tayuya looked down at his arm. Make sure that stays where it is. No lower, no higher. Bathroom, the blonde informed. Tayuya pushed harder on his chest. Naruto sighed and attempted to get up again only to have Tayuya move faster. She was now straddling his waist. Her weight was holding him down. Naruto took time to commend Tsunade's healing abilities. He did notice Tayuya's wince, however. The redhead held his hands above his head. Naruto tried to lift her up, but he was still a little tired. The damn fox wasn't doing his job. He had two options: use all his remaining strength to push her off or try to compromise with her. Being Naruto, he chose the first. Look, I have to pee, so let me up. No, Naruto kept trying, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to lift her up with only his hips. Every time he would try, she would raise her own hips and drop all her weight on him along with a curse of pain or two. It was a repetitive process that only got more annoying by the second. "Will you stop moving?" Tsuande whispered harshly. "You're not helping my legs, shithead." "I have to go piss or else I'm gonna blow," Naruto stated angrily. "Let me up. You'd better wait. I'm not ready to be left alone in this shithole," Tsuande replied, equally stubborn. At that moment, a gasp at the door caught both teens' attention. Shizune's wide eyes stared in before she opened the door entirely. Tsunade and Sakura also watched, transfixed at what they thought was happening. Thinking back on it, the motions they were making could be placed in the category of a very personal activity. All three women stared at Naruto as if he were the only thing in existence. Unfortunately, his voice didn't come to his aid. The only sound that permeated the silence was of liquid hitting the floor as Naruto pissed himself. Naruto lay there, having no idea what to do. A kunoichi from an enemy village was under the sheets with him, and he'd bet his entire ramen stash that all three ladies had seen her bouncing on him. Of course, they didn't know that she was a sound nin. They thought she was Kiera, a civilian. However, that had no effect on his current situation. Tsunade was probably about to give him the worst beating of his life, and to top it all off, he had piss running down his leg. Tsuande just stared at the door. She too was dumbfounded. The redhead had to fight to keep down her blush when she realized she was still on top of Naruto. She slowly slid off, releasing a small cry of pain that the other women likely assumed to be a different sound. Avoiding eye contact with the people at the door the entire time, she crawled back into her bed. It hurt like hell because of her legs, but she would make it with the Hokage standing in the door. "Naruto, can we, talk to you for a minute?" Shizune asked in a calm voice, seeing that the other two hadn't recovered from their stupor. Naruto sat up. Sure Shizune-chan. Can you just give me a second? I need to clean up." Shizune didn't know that Naruto would be so upfront about it. She understood though. If what she thought happened did, she would want him to clean up too. "We'll be waiting outside. Take your time. Thanks, Ne-chan." As soon as the door closed, Naruto let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He was almost positive that Tsunade wanted to beat the shit out of him. If it weren't for Shizune, he would be a bloody pulp without anything to identify himself as male right now. He looked over and saw Tsuande's eyes were wide open and fear-filled. He pitied the girl. She'd been caught in a supposedly lewd act and feared for her life because of it. "Tsuande, are you okay?" "Of course I'm not okay, shithead." Tsuande started, her lower lip was trembling. "The Hokage probably once kicked my ass and then put me out of the hospital." Naruto swung his feet over the side of the bed and stood up. He started walking over to her, and for a minute Tsuande thought he was going to kick her out himself because he was tired of her. She had no place to go until her legs were fixed, and now she had no one to talk to that could be trusted. She dug deeper into the blankets, anything to avoid her inevitable ejection from the hospital. She was surprised, however, when a hand pulled back the covers and stroked her cheek lightly. Tsuande looked up to see Naruto staring down on her with caring eyes. "I told you we had a deal, right? I'll take care of you, and you give me some information, maybe. Even if you don't, I still won't let anyone hurt you." He spoke determinedly. "Even if it is your fault," the blonde added. The urge to bite his hand because of his snarky remark left as soon as it came. Tsuande could only stare up like a child under his intense gaze. "Why?" She spoke softly. The blonde thought that voice suited her more. He smiled. "Because I never go back on my word. I made a promise, nay?" Naruto stood up and closed the blinds, cloaking the room in darkness. He walked to the bathroom, got a clean towel, and then wiped up whatever was on the floor from his accident. After wiping himself with a warm towel as well, he discarded his clothes and put on a hospital gown on the bathroom rack. Then he rolled up the covers and set them in the laundry basket along with his clothes. "Get some sleep tonight." He looked over his shoulder. A grin surfaced on his face. "You should snuggle into the covers more often, Tsuande-chan. It makes you even cuter than you already are." He walked out. Tsuande blushed under the covers. The little shit sure did have a lot of guts to keep teasing her like this, or maybe he wasn't. She never did have anyone feel affection towards her. Here was a boy who she hadn't even known for 2 days, and he was willing to give his life for her. Hell, he even started calling her to Yuya-chan. Even though she denied it, there was a tiny part of her that wished that Naruto really did like her. He would be the first. She went to sleep with a smile on her face that night, hoping he would really be there in the morning. Naruto walked out of the hospital room and turned to face three emotional women. He really wasn't in the mood for this right now. Why don't we go talk about this in my office? The hallway isn't the best place for this conversation. Tsunade suggested. The walk to her office was awkward to say the least. Shizune kept giving him looks over her shoulder, probably wondering if he would take this chance to run away. Sakura didn't even glance at him the entire time. She would probably attack him after Tsunade was done if there was anything left. The Godem faced forward the entire time, walking in a business-like manner. When they finally made it to the office, Tsunade sat down in her chair with Sakura and Shizune on either side of her. Tsunade Ba-chan, about what you saw. I was just, save it Gaki. She interrupted, I don't really want to know what went on in there. All I want to know was if it was consensual. That's all the Hokage should be concerned about. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Consensu what? She means if you and Kiara had and if you had her permission, Shizune stated, blushing. Despite her medical prowess, having to explain this to the boy she thought of as a younger brother still embarrassed her. What? No, that's not what happened. We didn't do that. All three women narrowed their eyes at him. The next 45 minutes were spent with Naruto explaining what had happened, along with why they heard what they did. Tsunade nodded silently the entire time while her apprentice let out a sigh of relief when he'd completely explained himself. All three women had the decency to blush after thinking such thoughts about Naruto. That's what happened, we didn't do anything, he huffed. Sakura felt a little happier knowing that he didn't do anything with Kiara. Though she'd never felt such a feeling about Naruto. Was it because he constantly fawned over her and now there seemed to be another girl in his life? Maybe it was because he kissed her last night. Albeit it was just a kiss on the forehead, but a kiss was a kiss. Sakura snapped from her reverie when her new sensei spoke again. Alright brat, you're off the hook, but I'm watching you. Tsunade warned with an evil parental glare in her eye. Hi Naruto. Be careful, and take this. Shizune handed him a handwritten scroll describing a new jutsu. Naruto's excitement rose for all of 2 seconds until he'd read the contents. He closed it immediately and thrust it back into her hands. Shizune-chan, I don't need this. I already told you I wasn't going to do that. I said just in case, now take it. Shizune bored holes into him with her eyes. Naruto gulped and took scroll. He'd never thought the Hokage's apprentice could be so forceful. I won't have you making a mistake because you were careless. Naruto crossed his arms. Can I go back to my room now? It's almost 11 and I need to get some sleep so I can train tomorrow. Fine, Tsunade said. Sakura, you accompany him back to his room. Make sure he gets in his own bed. Hi Tsunade-sama, let's go Naruto. Naruto and Sakura left. They started walking down the long back to his hospital room. Both were eerily silent the whole time. That was until Sakura decided to bring up what was on her mind. Naruto, can I ask you something? What is it, Sakura-chan? I was wondering. Where is Kiara going to stay when she gets out? I heard Tsunade-sama say she couldn't stay in the hospital because she isn't a villager in the Leaf, so where will she stay? Oh, that's easy. She's going to be staying with me until she gets better, Naruto said enthusiastically. Sakura tripped and almost fell flat on her face. Naruto caught her in his arms with surprising speed, saving her from possibly breaking her nose. She turned in his arms and looked into his blue eyes. He looked so much more handsome when he was serious. Are you okay, Sakura-chan? Sakura brought her partially opened hand to her lips. The crook of her right index finger rested cutely against them. Hi, I'm fine. I guess I'm just clumsy, huh? They both shared a laugh before Sakura became aware she was still in his arms. She blushed heavily and cleared her throat. Naruto got the message and helped her to her feet, his arms encircling her waist the entire time. Neither of them had noticed they'd already arrived at his room. Well, good night Sakura-chan. Good night Naruto. Naruto opened the door and walked in. He looked out to see Sakura standing there waiting for something. He sighed and went to his sheet-less bed to lie down. She really did wait for me to get in my own bed, he thought. Satisfied, Sakura was about to leave when she realized there would be hardly any more time to spend with Naruto now that he had to take care of that girl. He would be around her most of the time. She hadn't really spent that much time with him in the past anyway. Though with Sasuke gone she had nothing to do with most of her free time and she had to make sure he didn't kill himself. She ignored her own thinking and addressed Naruto. "Naruto, how would you like to go to Ichiraku with me tomorrow?" His grin was visible even in the dark hospital room. "That sounds great, Sakura-chan. Like a date?" Sakura swallowed, her fist curled at her side. "No, Naruto, as friends." "Oh." He sounded a little disappointed. "Well then I'll bring Kiara-chan along so she can enjoy the fabulousness that is Ichiraku ramen." Sakura was about to protest but then she remembered they were just going as friends. It also sounded as if he was about to call that Kiara girl something else for a moment, but she dismissed it. The girl didn't have a different name and if she did he would tell her. Naruto didn't keep things from her, they were close friends and teammates. "Alright Naruto, I'll see you tomorrow at 2. Yosh, we'll be there." After Sakura closed the door, Naruto put everything he could into sleeping so that tomorrow would come sooner. He was exhausted after carrying Tayuya from Fire Country border and figured that he'd be alright in the morning. Even so, sleep didn't come easy that night for him. It wasn't because the bed had no blanket, he was used to sleeping without a blanket at his apartment. The hospital was just cold beyond reason, even the windows were closed and he was still freezing his ass off. Naruto tossed and turned for 30 minutes until he heard shifting in the bed next to his. "Hey shithead, if you're cold you can come sleep over here." Naruto flipped over. "Huh? I said you can come sleep over here or freeze until you falls off." "It's your choice." Tayuya spoke again, body turned away from him. Naruto's cheeks heated a little. "I wish I could, but if Ba-chan sees us in the same bed again she would think we. And why would you give a flying fuck what she thinks? As long as you and I know what happened, why should it matter what anyone else thinks?" The redhead pressed. Naruto contemplated this for a moment. If Tsunade found Tayuya and him next to each other in the morning, there would be trouble. They could just explain that it was cold and he had no clean blankets. So what if she did think that they had? It wasn't as if they did and he couldn't be pegged as a pervert if Tayuya explained the situation. That would also lift all pressures of sleeping beside each other from then on because he was sure Tayuya didn't want to be alone in an enemy village. Satisfied with his logic, Naruto nodded. "Alright, on one condition though." Tayuya faced him, her eyes peeked out from the top of the blanket. "What's that shithead? If Tsunade Ba-chan finds us in the morning you explain what happened, and none of that, 'I fucked his brains out' stuff. If you're going to say we had then at least make it less perverted." Tayuya paused. She shrugged and turned again, neither agreeing to his terms nor indicating she even heard him. Naruto waited, halfway out the bed and feet on the floor. His face drooped. "Tayuya-chan." Tayuya shuffled a bit. Hi, whatever you say shithead." Naruto assumed she hadn't paid attention but he didn't feel like bothering her anymore tonight. She was actually being nice to him and he didn't want to ruin it. None of this thinking caused his bed to grow any warmer either. He jumped up and walked over to the side of her bed. Tayuya scooted over, leaving enough room for him to lie down. They pulled up the covers awkwardly together and laid there for a moment. He looked at her green eyes before she turned away. Naruto thought she was becoming uncomfortable and was about to scoot away, but Tayuya tucked closer to him so that her back was pressed against his chest. Naruto turned a shade of red and had to prevent himself from thinking perverted thoughts lest something under his gown poke her in the back. "Don't try anything or I'll snap your neck." He chuckled a little. "Good night, Tayuya-chan." Naruto put his arm around her middle. Tayuya forced back a squeak of surprise, but remained still. It would take some time to get used to the contact. The blonde pulled her close to him, hoping she wouldn't smack him. "I won't let anyone hurt you, so get some sleep and stop worrying," Naruto said as he held her protectively. He'd intended for it to be a friendly gesture, but Tayuya was taking it an entirely different way. She wanted to yell and shout at him, tell him to get the fuck off of her, but he was so goddamn warm. With the hospital cold, she had a viable reason in the case someone came in and saw them. So instead she relaxed and decided to let him enjoy himself just this once, but only because they were in a building with near polar temperatures. "Good night shithead," she sighed out. The blonde squeezed her midsection irritably. "Will you ever stop calling me that?" "Maybe, when you stop calling me Tayuya-chan." Naruto grinned. "No deal." Both shared a soft laugh before drifting off into a peaceful sleep, the only thing on their minds strangely being each other. Naruto awoke to the smell of earth and forest, but it was mixed in with something else. It wasn't disgusting or anything. Ninjas usually grew used to sleeping in forests when on missions, but this wasn't just a forest smell. It smelled like apples? No, not only that, cinnamon too. That was it, cinnamon, apples, and forest mixed into one smell. It was an entirely comfortable and enjoyable aroma that provided a serene atmosphere. He breathed in the scent once more before relaxing and falling into a light slumber. Tsuande felt warm. It wasn't normal warmth, and there was an arm around her middle that helped her feel somewhat comforted. She had no idea how, but Naruto retained special warmth when he was with her. If he was always warm, then he would have stayed in his own bed last night. She felt his nose nuzzle into her neck and then he started breathing, causing her to laugh softly because he was tickling her. Naruto opened his eyes after hearing the sound of laughing. He realized his face was in the crook of Tsuande's neck. He breathed in again and found that the scent that was occupying his nose was hers. It only made him tuck further in and enjoy the moment. After a couple of minutes he realized he had to get up. Sakura would be waiting at Ichiraku. With reluctance, he disengaged himself from Tsuande, who shivered a little when he got out of bed. "We need to get up, Tsuande-chan. Sakura-chan will be waiting for us at Ichiraku." The redhead rolled over. "What time is it, shithead?" Naruto looked at the clock in the hospital room and almost slapped himself. It was only 8:30 in the morning and he was already in a hurry to get to Sakura. He wanted to get back under the blankets, but Tsunade would probably walk in any minute. "It's still pretty early, but Ba-chan will be here in a minute to kick us out. It would be better for us to leave before that happens." He scratched his head and yawned. "I'll make sure to tell her where we're going before we leave the hospital so she doesn't worry." The redhead rubbed her eyes. She blinked hard a few times. Naruto resisted a giggle. Waking up in such a different area must have felt a bit foreign to her. "Fine, but you know you have to carry me." He nodded. "Hi, come on, the sooner we get to my apartment the more rest we can get." Tsuande attempted to sit up, only to fall down again when she realized her arms could fully support her weight. They were a bit sore from holding the blondes down the night before. She grumbled and lifted her arms up to Naruto. This likely meant in body language, "Pick me up," or in Tsuande's case, "You better pick me up before I gouge your eyes out, shithead." Naruto got the message and lifted her into his arms, careful of her injured limbs the whole time. Then he took off down the hall. 5 minutes later they were in front of the Hokage's office. Naruto took a deep breath before walking in. This would be a long talk. "Ba-chan, we're about to leave to go." Naruto stopped in mid-sentence, noticing the Godem was asleep at her desk. She looked harmless, but Naruto personally knew better. He set Tsuande down in a corner and quickly found a pen and paper on the desk. After he finished scribbling he left the note on the desk. Seconds later Naruto was bounding across rooftops with Tsuande in his arms. The wind felt good passing through his hair and through his ass. He stopped in mid-bound, landing on a rooftop and cursed quietly. So that would explain the greater hostile heated glares of hate and jealousy coming from the male villagers he'd jumped over. The blonde forgot that he'd abandoned his dirty clothes in favor of a clean hospital gown last night, which was all he had on now. He looked down to see Tsuande's confused face. "I forgot that I put my dirty clothes in the hospital bin last night and put on this gown," Naruto said, gesturing to his present attire. "I've been jumping across rooftops virtually naked." Tsuande laughed at his misfortune for a moment before stopping suddenly, her face now a color that would make her hair look pink. She started stuttering out random things before finally making a coherent sentence. "Does that mean that you slept like that last night?" It took Naruto a minute to piece together what she was trying to say. When he finally did, all he could do was nod his head when he realized he and Tsuande were almost naked the night before while tucked into each other. His face now matched hers, and he wondered if it would be a beating or a verbal abuse this time. Even though she was still injured, a woman scorned was not to be taken lightly. He prepared himself for the worst, but what happened next was, to say the least, unexpected. "Arigato." "Huh? Why?" "Because even if you were almost naked last night, you still didn't try anything. I did say I'd snap your neck, but you probably knew it was an empty threat considering how banged up I am." Tsuande cast her gaze to a faraway building. "There are so many people who would have taken advantage in a situation like that, but you didn't. I guess I can really trust you, huh, shithead?" Naruto stared down at the girl, shocked. Had she just thanked him? Thinking about it, she'd seemed really down after he told her how long she had been out there and Orochimaru still hadn't come for her. She must have been really broken inside. Knowing that the one you called master most of your life didn't care about you anymore was a heavy burden. It was surprising to know that she'd been holding up as well as she had. Instead of questioning her about it, he opted for a small, "You're welcome," and then they continued on their way. When he reached the apartment, he sat Tsuande gently on the bed and looked around. The place was in serious need of some cleaning, but he'd take care of that later. For now he was cold, almost naked, and wanted a little more sleep. He went over to his alarm and set it for 1 o'clock, then looked back at his bed. Tsuande motioned for him to come over and sleep, and he obliged, snuggling behind her with his arm wrapped around her middle. The blonde looked over her shoulder to see her face. "You sure you're okay with this?" The Oto Kunoichi knit her eyebrows. She poked him lightly with her elbow. "Stop worrying about other people so much, shithead. It'll be the death of you." Naruto sighed contentedly. He tucked deeper into the bed and was asleep in seconds. It took Tsuande a little longer, but it wasn't because she was feeling awkward. It was because she was thinking about the boy sleeping behind her and how he had managed to get this close to her in only a day. Maybe it was because he ignored her language and tried to see the real her. The fact that he had the balls to stand up to her didn't hurt either. She tried to think again, but was entirely too comfortable to do anything but go back to sleep. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A heavy fist slammed down on the metallic device, shattering it and sending pieces all around the room. Sakura Haruno got up and attempted to check the time, only to realize she'd broken the alarm clock once again. "I've got to learn to be less aggressive when I wake up." She got dressed and went downstairs to find her father making breakfast alongside her mother. Growing up, Sakura had always been taught to never take into account the assumption that because she was a girl she was weaker than most boys. Her parents always did things together, so she wouldn't think that there were separate rules for shinobi and kunoichi. She had once slept over Ino's house and come downstairs the next morning to find her mother cooking and her father reading an issue of Konoha Daily, and thought it was the strangest thing. When she mentioned it to Ino's mother, she said she always did the cooking, but she would ask her husband about it. From then on, whenever she visited the Yamanaka household, Ino's parents did things together. She still thought it was funny to see Ino's father, Inoichi Yamanaka, in a pink apron. When she looked at the clock in the living room, it read 10 in the morning. She had plenty of time to make it to Ichiraku Ramen after her training with Tsunade sensei. Maybe she would pick up a gift for Naruto after training for saving her from that fall yesterday, though she had no idea what he liked. It wasn't like she could teach him any new jutsu, and his kenjutsu was about average level, so he probably didn't want any new kunai or shuriken to use. There was absolutely nothing to get him. The only thing he liked was ramen. Maybe she could give him that date he asked for. That was the only thing she could think of besides ramen. Oh, that's right. Sakura plotted at the dining table, nervously prodding her food all the while. The only problem was that Kiera girl. It was his mission to take care of her. Sakura had nothing against the girl personally, but when she saw Naruto with her last night, she felt an inexplicable hatred toward her. The problem was she would be in the way of Naruto's gift, so Sakura had to find a way around that. She could just get someone to watch the girl while she and Naruto went out. She decided to go ahead with her plan and go to Ichiraku early. She would need the time to buy his gift. She would also talk to Tsunade about getting someone to watch over Kiera for tomorrow. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Naruto reached over and turned off his alarm clock. Tsuande awoke soon after, grumbling at being woken up again. The blonde wrapped his arm back around her. "You really like to sleep, don't you?" She turned an irritated eye his way. "No, I just don't like waking up every fucking hour on the hour." "Well, we need to get up. It's almost 1 and Sakura-chan won't be happy if we're late." "I don't give a shit," the redhead forced through a yawn. "I'm still sleepy. Have you considered the fact that you're sleepy because you haven't eaten anything except that nasty-ass hospital food yesterday?" Tsuande's eye didn't leave his face. It crinkled in amusement. "Did you just cuss at me, shithead? I must be rubbing off on you." Naruto thought about it. The blonde didn't try to deny it. He didn't curse frequently except for when he got angry, which rarely happened. Maybe she could influence people as much as he could. That would be interesting. Seeing a bunch of foul-mouthed irate people around Konoha would be a sight to see. He made a note to never let her near the ninja academy, the after effects would be dire. The blonde did his best to shrug. Maybe I did. We still need to get up and dressed. I need a shower and you should probably take one too. Naruto's cheeks heated a little. I don't know how you would pull that off in your condition though. What the hell do you mean, in my condition? Well, aside from your healing legs. Tsuande cut him off. Just because I have a few sissy-ass injuries you think I can't fucking bathe myself? Naruto thought recently broken legs could hardly be thought of as sissy injuries. Even though Tsunade had healed her arms for the most part, it still wouldn't be easy. He sighed. Fine, do what you want. I'm going first though. I don't want to have to wait for you to take forever. Before Tsuande could respond he hurried out of bed into the bathroom. By the time she looked over the echo of running water could already be heard through the door. After 10 minutes the water stopped and he came out in nothing but a towel. Tsuande averted her eyes. Hey, Gomen. Forgot my clothes when I rushed in. 5 minutes later he came out fully dressed. Naruto sat on the bed and waited for Tsuande to move. Her face was stuck in a thinking pose. He would offer to help her, but she would just be stubborn and refuse, so he sat and waited. It was getting late, almost 1:30 and Tsuande still hadn't made a move. She would look at him every 3 minutes and then look back at the door. Naruto cleared his throat but to no avail. It seemed like he would have to be the bigger man, or person. Tsuande, can I at least help you get into the tub and you can do everything else by yourself? We're gonna be late to meet Sakura-chan. Tsuande didn't respond, she just looked at the ground and lifted her arms up. Naruto took the initiative and picked her up. When he got to the bathroom he set her in the tub and placed a towel on the rim. It was up to her to do the rest. He went outside and waited, then the water came on and he figured she had everything handled. After about 15 minutes he started to get worried. He got up to listen at the door, but all he heard was water running. Right as the blonde prepared to barge in the water stopped. He covertly made it back to the bed, not making a sound the entire time. Shithead. Naruto shot up and rushed into the bathroom. Tsuande sat in the tub, naked, covering herself as best she could with her hands. The blood that rushed to her upper torso made her look sunburned. They both stood in an awkward silence until Naruto recognized the situation he'd stumbled into. He quickly about-faced. What happened? Get the fuck out. I just needed you to get me some fucking clothes, you fucking pervert. Naruto tried to explain as best he could with his back facing her, but she started throwing things at him, even hitting him in the back of the head with the soap. He ran out, not bothering to close the door, and quickly went to his drawer. There was a black shirt and some baggy gray pants he never wore in the top one. Naruto ran back to the bathroom and tossed the clothes in without looking. He slammed it and darted back to the bed. It took another 10 minutes for Tsuande to call him again. This time he cautiously opened the door and asked if she was ready. What do you think I called you for, the perverted asshole? It was an accident. Tsuande sat in the tub completely clothed. Naruto had no idea how she managed to change in her condition, but he wasn't going to ask for details. The shirt was a little big around her and the pants kept falling off her waistline, but she would manage. The blonde idly wondered if his morning would get any worse. The clock on the wall nearly caused him to have a panic attack. They only had 5 minutes to get to Ichiraku and he'd rather not be late to meet Sakura. This was only the second time she'd ever invited him to eat ramen with her. If he carried the redhead bridal style, they probably wouldn't get there fast enough. He took her out the tub and set her down on the bed. He rolled his shoulders. Your arms work right? The redhead exemplified this by crossing said appendages. What if they do, shithead? Naruto didn't say anything. Instead he walked over to Tsuande and crouched down, back-facing her. He grabbed her legs and gently pulled her to him until she fell against his back. Tsuande responded and put her arms around his neck. You better not drop me, shithead, or I'll bring you with me. Naruto ignored her and jumped out the window, going full speed to his favorite ramen stand. It took 7 minutes to arrive and he hoped Sakura wouldn't mind him being a little late. When he pulled back the flaps he saw that the pinkhead had already seated herself. It looked like she hadn't ordered anything. Naruto sighed in relief. He grinned. Hey Sakura-chan, you waited for me. Sakura smiled back. Well, I did invite you, Naruto. Oh yeah, ouch. Naruto looked back over his shoulder to see Tsuande's teeth embedded in it. She had even broken the skin through his jacket. Shithead, you better put me down before I eat your arm instead of the shitty ramen this place probably serves. Sakura looked at Tayuya, astounded. Had this girl really just insulted Naruto's favorite ramen stand? Ayame and Tsuchi threw two harsh looks the redhead's way. If anyone would have taken the time to look at Naruto, they would notice the angry expression plastered on his face. Kiera-chan, we need to talk for a minute. Naruto turned around. Please excuse us Tsuchi-san. Ayame-ne-san, Sakura-chan. Naruto walked outside with Tayuya still on his back. He turned the corner to a vacant alleyway. The blonde set her down on the floor and then sat down himself. He took a deep breath to calm himself and then looked at Tayuya. Frustration was still evident behind his irises. The sun gave the blonde's eyes an eerie quality, almost as if they were flickering from red to blue. She must have been imagining things. His hard gaze caused a small, unexpected wave of shame to fall over her. Tayuya-chan, we need to talk about your attitude. The three still inside the ramen stand were confused. Usually when someone insulted Ichiraku ramen stand when Naruto was around he would boast about the fabulousness that was Ichiraku ramen, until that person either gave in or got a free bowl courtesy of himself. After most people tried the food they would thank him for a delicious meal and be on their way. Some would even get seconds. It always happened like that, so why was this girl any different? Sakura stood up. I'm going to see if Naruto is okay, he seems a little off lately. She opened the flap to the entrance and stepped outside. Naruto was nowhere in sight. Then barely audible sound of talking in one of the nearby alleyways caught her attention. Sakura walked until the talking became clearer then stopped. Unsurprisingly, it was Naruto and that girl. What's wrong with my attitude, shithead? Don't forget that you're still in an enemy village. Anyone could come and get you for acting out of the ordinary. Also, don't you ever insult any of my precious people. Whatever the condition. They're nice people and I won't hesitate to do what I need to protect them. Naruto paused. Tayuya-chan, I made a promise that I would protect you as long as you are here, but you aren't making easy. Could you please just act like you did with Ba-chan when you pretended to be nice? It would be easier to protect you and I wouldn't have to worry about any problems my friends may have with you. Naruto said this all in a calm voice. Tayuya scoffed. She really didn't care what people thought of her. If someone had a problem with her then they could tell it to her face. It was her approach on life and she wouldn't change it just to make him happy. Unfortunately, the circumstances didn't allow her much leeway. Drawing attention while trying to remain undercover was counterproductive. After Naruto's speech she reluctantly nodded her head in agreement. He did make a lot of sense after all. Maybe the little shit wasn't as dumb as she thought. The redhead smiled sweetly. A chill swept through the blonde. Alright Naruto-kun, I'll be good. How the hell does she do that? At least she had listened to him. He'd half expected her to start yelling at him and draw attention to herself. It seemed that he would be in for quite the number of surprises from the Oto Kunoichi. Naruto rose quickly. Alright, let's go back inside. Sakura-chan's probably waiting for us. Tayuya nodded and he picked her up. It was at this time that Sakura ran back to the stand. She didn't want Naruto to catch her eavesdropping. When they walked in the girl put on the exact cavity-giving smile that she'd wore for Naruto a few minutes before. Tsuchi's and Ayame's furious expressions cracked instantly. I'm sorry about that Tsuchi-san. Tayuya spoke, fingers twiddling in a nervous manner. I seem to be having a bad day and it was wrong of me to take it out on your stand. Well that's okay young lady, Tsuchi said, completely fooled. How about I give you a free bowl to help make your day better? That would be great Tsuchi-san. I'll have miso please. Tsuchi-jii-san, how about you give me a free bowl too? Naruto asked. The older Ichiraku shook his head. Naruto, I only gave. Tsuchi stopped and directed his attention at Tayuya. Gomen young lady. I didn't catch your name. Kiera, the redhead replied sweetly. I only gave Kiera-san a free bowl because she was having a bad day, but you seemed in high spirits when you came in earlier. Naruto sighed. If only the ramen stand owner had really known how badly his day had been. He would have received free ramen for life. He and Sakura placed their orders. The aroma of ramen drew the Oto Kunoichi's attention. Her stomach rumbled loudly in sync with Naruto's own. The other three paused, and then shared a laugh at their expense. Naruto chuckled along with them and turned to his teammate. So Sakura-chan, what did Ba-chan want to talk to you about? The pink cat brightened. Tsunade sensei said that you, recommended me to train with her. She also said you left a note about some things you found in the forest and wants to see you about it. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Of course I did. I mean, you might not have a lot of skill now. Sakura gave him an evil glare, but it didn't faze him, he just continued his sentence. But you have far more determination than any other kunoichi I know. Naruto-kun, do you think I could be a kunoichi too? Tayuya asked. The blonde's inquiring and warning eyes leveled on her own. Tayuya only smiled at him. The food already had come and they were all talking and eating at the same time. Instead of replying, Naruto started on his ramen. The redhead watched his chopsticks continuously dig through the ramen bowl. He was practically inhaling the meal. It takes a lot to be a ninja. Sakura spoke up. Hard work, skill, discipline, and perseverance are just a few off the top of my head. If you don't have any of those traits, then you won't make it. But didn't Naruto-kun say that you had no skill? Tayuya countered. If you don't have the skill to be a ninja, why are you one, Sakura-san? Sakura was taken aback for a moment. Well, I do have skill. I just need to hone it so I can be a better ninja. There was something about this girl. Why did she go by a fake name and why was Naruto going along with it? Tayuya, that's what she heard Naruto say. There was something about her that Sakura just didn't like. Why did you want to be a ninja when you had no skill though? Tayuya's voice was calm and relaxed, but Sakura was quickly losing her temper. It was at this time that Naruto noticed what the conversation around him was about. He had just finished his 5th bowl, but it seemed that the girls hadn't even eaten halfway through theirs. After hearing Tayuya insult Sakura, he tried to bang his head on the counter. What he failed to realize was that Tsuchi had just brought him his 6th bowl, which was hot, and he had face planted into it. Naruto's yells about his burning face drew everyone's attention. This effectively diffused the situation between the two females. Both of them had started laughing when he'd started running around the stand with hot ramen on his face. When the laughter died down a few minutes later, both Sakura and Tayuya picked up their napkins and started drying Naruto's face with it. Tayuya was getting the majority of his face, but then Sakura suddenly pushed over and got more. It turned into a battle between the two as they wiped Naruto's face faster and faster, completely ignoring his cries because he was getting cloth burns. When Naruto finally pushed them away, he already had several red streaks on each cheek. Sakura-chan, I think it's time we leave, I'm kinda full, he lied. He just wanted to get them away from each other. They all left the stand, Tayuya on Naruto's back, and said their goodbyes to Tsuchi and Ayame. Sakura started to walk Naruto home. She still had to give him his surprise. On the way they stayed relatively quiet. The only topic that came up every now and again was Sasuke between Naruto and Sakura. Tayuya would cough almost every time they said his name. Sakura was sure that it was intentional but didn't say anything. When they finally got back to the front door of Naruto's, and for the moment Tayuya's, apartment, Sakura resolved to give Naruto his present. They stopped at the bottom of his stairs. The pink cat put her hands behind her back. Naruto, I wanted to say thanks for, getting me a great sensei and believing in me. He grinned. No problem, Sakura-chan. We're teammates and friends, so don't worry about it. All you have to do for me is become a better ninja. That will make me happy. She looked at the ground. Still, I wanted to thank you, which is why I got you this. Sakura pulled out a white envelope with what seemed to be a colorful piece of paper inside. He slowly opened it and peeked through its opening. What Naruto saw brought waterfall tears to his eyes. Inside was a coupon for all-you-can-eat ramen at Ichiraku Ramen for 1 week. He could keep going back for more the entire day. These cost a fortune. He could buy one, but it would all but bankrupt him. Naruto turned the coupon over in his hands a few times. Sakura-chan, how did you get one of these? This would cost too much to get unless you did like 3 B-rank missions. I've been saving up from all our missions. I think you deserve it, Naruto. Think of it as a thank you present from me. Naruto wanted to hug her, but that would be awkward with Tayuya on his back. Instead, he opted for a small smile and Sakura returned it. Just as he turned to go up the stairs, a hand on his arm stopped him. The pink-haired kunoichi had skillfully maneuvered around Tayuya to grab him. Sakura toyed with her hair. Though her eyes were on the ground, the blonde temporarily caught sight of a light blush before her hair hid it. And Naruto, I forgot to tell you there's a part 2 to your gift. Part 2? Well, we could go on that date you always wanted, Sakura offered. She'd have laughed at the irony of the situation had Naruto not had on one of the biggest smiles she'd ever seen him wear. But only if you take me somewhere nice. She added quickly. No Ichiraku. Naruto's smile faltered a little, but it was hardly noticeable. His face changed to a slightly somber look seconds later. He shook his head. Sakura's eyes fell a bit. I have to watch Kiara-chan, he stated solidly. She's still injured, and as much as I want that date with you, I promised I'd keep her safe. Tayuya brightened a little at this. Sakura's light blush returned. Oh, that's no problem. I already asked in Shizune-senpai and she said she'd keep an eye on her. Naruto's smile returned. Really? Is that okay with you, Kiara-chan? Tayuya merely grunted in response. She knew he would probably go anyway. Naruto pumped his fist, nearly losing his balance. Yosh, I'll be there to pick you up at, 7, okay? For our date. It feels good saying that. Sakura giggled. I'll see you at 7, Naruto. She turned to leave. Naruto's inquiring eyes watched her still back. Without warning, Sakura ran over to the blonde and attempted to kiss him on the cheek, only to have Tayuya move to the same side to block her. Sakura glared hotly before turning to the other cheek, which Tayuya promptly blocked again. Naruto had no idea what was going on. He thought they were finally getting along and were playing a game, so he just went along with it. When Sakura started getting closer, Tayuya took a hold of Naruto's chin with one hand and moved him yet again. Every time she would get close, Tayuya would move Naruto's face so she would miss and get air. Thinking tactfully, Sakura tried to confuse Tayuya by faking her out. This had its intended result as her lips finally met his. Naruto didn't know what was happening. One minute they were playing a game and the next Sakura's soft lips collided with his own. They both just stood there, Tayuya gaping from behind, until they separated. Naruto started stuttering out random things thinking it was fault, and Sakura did the same. They stared at each other, one in fear and the other in surprise, before giggling together softly. I'll see you tomorrow for our date, Sakura-chan. Good night, Naruto-kun. Naruto's heart leapt. The pinkette instantly brought a hand to her closed mouth. Both were surprised at what she just called him. Sakura had never called him anything but just regular Naruto. Maybe she really was over Sasuke. Good night, Sakura-chan, he said with a smile. Sakura started running to her home. She didn't stop until she arrived, heart beating wildly the entire way. The pinkette darted up her stairs and into her room, setting both locks before she collapsed on the bed, heart still racing. She had a date with Naruto tomorrow. Naruto Uzumaki of all people. Her frenzied mind stopped on the thought of her first kiss being with her blonde teammate instead of the Avenger she'd admired for so long. Caressing her lips softly, Sakura couldn't help but turn over into her pillow to let out an excited squeal. Even though she was surprised at her own eagerness, she couldn't help but think of the preparations she'd need. Sakura hoped he'd dress up too. After the accidental kiss with Sakura, Naruto stood rooted to the ground. Tayuya would have told him to move his lazy ass, but she too was in a stupor. After about 5 minutes, Naruto moved inside, supporting Tayuya by her thighs because she had lost her grip. He set her down on the bed and moved to the bathroom to look in the mirror. Naruto put his fingers on his lips. He could still feel the warmth of Sakura's on them. A sudden surge of excitement hit the blonde. Before he realized it, he was dancing around his small bathroom. He was going on a date with Sakura tomorrow. It was hardly believable. When he got back to bed, Tayuya was taking up most of it. When he tried to climb in, she shifted so he had no room to get in. This was a little strange. She'd never had a problem with him sleeping beside her before. Naruto rationalized he could just sleep on the couch though, he didn't mind. Although he was still worried about Tayuya. She had her face hidden beneath the blanket so she couldn't be seen. Naruto prodded her with his index finger. Tayuya-chan, are you? Tayuya whipped her head up. Naruto released a surprised gasp at her face. Her eyes were red and slightly puffy. She looked as if she had been crying. Before he could ask her what was wrong, she'd opened her mouth to yell at him. Do I fucking look okay to you, shithead? The redhead raged. A tear escaped her right eye. This only seemed to irritate her further. Just leave me the fuck alone and enjoy your fucking date. Naruto was too shocked to respond. He moved over to the couch and tried to sleep, but he couldn't. The excitement of his date tomorrow was part of what kept him up, but he also couldn't stop thinking about Tayuya and her reaction to it. Did she and Sakura have a problem with each other? Naruto had no more time to think about it because as that last thought came across his mind, sleep overtook him.